Yeah, they just wanted to give us a courtesy notice, so because they're
No, we're all here whenever you're
a
ready.
little while after they get lettered out, they're just so much.
She was great, by the way.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Okay.
I was very.
Some people are so.
You know what I mean? Yeah. it was
Hi, everyone. How are we in the room? Do we feel like we're ready to go from IT?
We're ready whenever you are.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to call to order the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Commission business meeting. First, I want to start off with a recognition that today is Earth Day. And on this day, we're reminded of the work that Oregon State Parks and Recreation is at its core. It's about stewardship, caring for the landscapes, waters, and cultural heritage that define our state and enrich the lives of Oregonians and visitors alike. And I'd really like to take some time to acknowledge the ongoing work of our dedicated staff and volunteers. You guys do so much, and we're so grateful. But in particular, thank you for your daily commitment that you bring to protecting these places while making them accessible and welcoming for all. Your work ensures that future generations can experience the same sense of wonder and connection to nature that inspires us. As a commission, we remain committed to supporting this mission while balancing preservation with access and ensuring that Oregon Parks continues to thrive in the face of the growing use and changing environmental conditions. Earth Day is both a celebration, but also a call to action, and we are proud to stand with you in this important work. So we just want to acknowledge that it's a really special day, and Oregon State Parks does so much to protect Oregon. And yeah, so didn't want to go without saying something, acknowledging the challenges that we face, but all the good work that's being done. So with that, I want to go around and let everybody introduce themselves, and we will start with the commission members. I'll go first. I'm Liz Hill, Commissioner from Congressional District 2, chairing the commission, and then I will pass it over to Commissioner Izumi.
Good morning. My name is Betty Izumi, and I'm the Commissioner representing District 3. Thank you.
Commissioner Perullo.
Good morning. I'm Dave Perullo, and I'm the Commissioner representing District 1.
Commissioner Spence.
Stu Spence, Commissioner representing East of the Cascades.
Commissioner Condor.
I'm Commissioner Condor, and I represent Congressional District 5.
Awesome. And then in the room, I think we have Commissioner Griggs.
Yes, Jane Briggs. I'm in the Salem area. I still don't know which congressional district 5, but I'm not 1,
That's
3,
okay.
or 5.
Just wherever you're from. And then if folks in the room could go around and introduce yourselves so we know who's online.
Katie Gauthier, External Relations Manager for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Great.
Denise Warburton, Executive Assistant to the Director and Commission.
Good morning, Jamie Jones, Oregon State Park, Supervisor of Agency Support.
Good morning, Suzanne Harpel, HR Director.
Good morning, Stephanie Coons, Director, Oregon State Parks and Recreation Department.
Cool.
Good morning, I'm Matt Rippey, the Deputy Director for Field and Community Services with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Good morning, everyone. J.R. Collier, Deputy Director of Central Business Services.
Good morning, and I'm Steve Shipsey. I'm counsel to the commission.
That's all we have.
Okay, and then I see Kristen is online.
Yes, good morning. Kristen Jones, Strategic Initiatives Director.
And Suzanne.
I already introduced myself.
Oh, did you really? Did I miss you?
No worries.
It's been a morning. I started with another 7 a.m. board meeting, so we've been going all morning. All right, so next up on our agenda, we have to approve the February minutes. So I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Unless there's any changes to those minutes, the question on the table is whether to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say no. Seeing none, it is approved. All right, next up on the agenda, we have to approve our current agenda. I would entertain a motion to,
Motion to approve the April 2026 agenda.
thank you, Commissioner Perullo. Can I get a second?
Second.
Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the April 2026 agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. Seeing none, it is approved. Great. Next on our agenda, we move to public comment. And my understanding, Katie, is we do not have any public comment. Is that right?
Chair Hill, correct. We have distributed the written public comment to commissioners, and no one has signed up to provide oral public comment. We will have someone coming in to discuss their petition during the rulemaking.
All right. All right, great. So let's move on to the director's update.
Thanks, Chair Hill. We'll have, Katie's gonna give us a update on revenue work group, and then she has another topic on bios on our website.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Katie Gothier here with an update on the agency legislative revenue work group. Sure you can see this. We're good now to work. So the Speaker of the House has authorized convening a revenue strategy work group. Representative Levy is co-convening it and has been reaching out to members. The intent behind this is really to have a public-private legislative work group to recommend revenue concepts for the 2027 legislative session that support our long-term stewardship, operations, and visitor experience. The work group will meet over the next 6 months. We're anticipating 5 to 6 meetings. We're in the process of scheduling the first meeting, hopefully in May, and really dive into potential long-term revenue generating concepts, ways that we can balance our near-term and long-term revenue needs, and look for some suggestions and solutions. Currently, we have 10 members confirmed. We're reaching out to a couple of additional members. We have 4 legislators that have agreed. I'm gonna scroll a little faster so you can see who the members are that have agreed. So we have 4 legislators that have agreed to participate. Representative Levy is co-convening it. Representative Reese Iverson from Prineville, Senator Dick Anderson from Lincoln City, and then Senator Lieber from the Portland area. We have business professionals who've agreed. Kevin Hopper worked with Dutch Bros and does some consulting. And we're still reaching out. We believe somebody from the Restaurant and Lodging Association will join. And then Katie McFall is the Deputy Director for Taste Newburgh. Cameron LaFoliette from Oregon Coastal Alliance and Steve Lambert from Jackson County are outdoor conservation partners. And then Rep. Levy reached out to a member of the public who has agreed to participate, and Chair Hill is going to co-convene along with Representative Levy. So we will start working on the agendas for these meetings and move forward with this. Get all the meetings scheduled. Any questions on the revenue work group? Okay, well, now we'll share the next item. Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission. The next item we wanted to talk about, you may recall that previously, for those of you who were on the commission previously, we discussed the potential of putting bios or backgrounds on our website. And so we wanted to bring that up again. The last decision was there were so many members moving off the commission that we wanted to reevaluate it when new members were on the commission. So we looked into what other commissions have their bios on the website, and it's pretty extensive. So these are just a few. I did find one Dogami So the Department of
Geology, mineral industries.
There we go. I knew the phone a friend on that one. They do not have their profiles on, but the majority of the commissions that I looked at had their profiles on. And just to share a little bit about what those look like, we have the Department of Transportation, and they have all of their bios. The Board of Forestry has member bios down on their page, and then Department of Fish and Wildlife, they have a great photo, and then member bios. So we just wanted to check with you to see if you're comfortable with us putting commission member bios and photos on the website.
I don't have a problem with it.
Any thoughts, any concerns? Any design edits? I like the idea of having a group photo up on our back of the webpage. That'd be nice.
Can we get the old JCPenney ones with like the shadow figure, like, you know, like the glamour shot?
Can we get
Sorry,
glamour shots?
You gotta rein me in, Cherry Hill. Sorry, I'll stop.
We're thinking alike. I want some glamour shots, some like 1990s glow. Okay. Well, thank you. I think yeah, Katie, you'll work with us on getting information that we need to get to you and headshots and whatnot. But it's just a good way to, make sure the public feels connected to the work we're doing. So, okay, Katie, anything else or Stephanie?
That is it for this, but we do have three. We're ready for 3B when you're ready.
Yeah, let's move on. Legislative update.
Okay. So, Commissioner Hill, Director Cones, and members of the commission, Katie Guthrie here with the legislative update. And for this legislative update, we need to approve our 2027 legislative concepts to submit to the governor's office and DAS so that they could potentially be introduced as bills by the governor on behalf of the agency. So for this, we have 2 proposed legislative concepts that I will present to you. And this is an action item, so we will need to vote to move forward with these. The first is a Heritage Hub, Heritage Services Fee Authority. And I think we've shared in the past that one of the projects is to develop a Heritage Hub, a modern database for cultural resources and heritage services. And as we're in the process of developing that system, there will be increased data available, and looking at many other state historic preservation offices and heritage programs around the country, they are charging for some of those services. So this concept provides in statute the authority for fees to be identified in rule for heritage programs. So it would be heritage services, access to Heritage Hub, potentially archaeology permits, cultural resource surveys, and consultation surveys. Any questions on this concept?
So just basically asking permission to charge a fee for that.
Correct. It gives the commission the authority to set fees in rule.
Perfect.
The second concept is very administrative. The Salmonberry Trail responsible agency changed from Oregon Department of Forestry to Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And so in statute, there is a Salmonberry Trail Trust Fund that was part of the it was dedicated to the Department of Forestry. We need to change that to be dedicated to OPRD. There are no funds in here, so it's not a revenue thing, but if in future sessions appropriations were made, then it needs to go to us and not to ODF. And ODF is supportive of this, and actually we're the ones that asked that we introduce this concept. Any questions on this concept?
Very exciting, really. Chair Hill, I would move approval of both concepts for consideration by the governor's office.
Wonderful. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion, questions for Katie before we move to a vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor of approving these two proposals signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Seeing none, so approved. Thank you, Katie. That was quick. Anything else on your end for legislative updates? Okay.
Chair Hill, no additional legislative updates. We were moving forward with concepts and we'll be monitoring the e-board and legislative days through the intro.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, keep us posted. All right, moving on to best practices, 3C.
Okay, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, Katie Guthier here with agenda item 3C. This is the adoption of best practices after our work session yesterday. So, oh, this is not the correct version. I apologize. I thought we had corrected this version. Let me get the correct version up here. We'll just skip through to here. We're going to stop sharing and give you the correct version of this presentation. I apologize. So the best practices report that you reviewed during the work session yesterday, this is the final version. We have all 16 measures passing. We do have 2 abstentions. And the rest, you can see all 16 are in the exceed or meet category. We did have one comment, not an additional best practice, but something that we will continue to work on is increasing training around OPRD staff roles, responsibilities, and positions. So with your approval, we will continue to track this for next year and submit this report to DAS. So the recommendation is to approve the report.
Great,
Oh,
thank you.
I'll move approval of the report.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. All right, all in favor of approving the report as displayed by Katie, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Seeing none, it's approved. Thank you. And just flagging that there were, for the public, there were a few abstentions because we have new commission members. And so those abstentions are based on not being present during some of that work. All right, moving on to JR, the Audit Committee.
Yes, thank you. Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, and J.R. Collier, Deputy Director of Central Business Services. And we'll be bringing forth item 3D, which is confirming commission's representative on the audit committee. I think we have this brief. Let me see if I can get my share going here. Maybe you have the item. I'm not seeing it in my list of available tabs, but yeah. So the audit committee for parks is provides oversight of OPRD, the governance, risk management, and internal controls. It serves as an independent advisory body and is made up of a group of folks. There's staff on there and some external folks. We currently have Portland State doing some of the audit functions for us. But also under that charter, one of our commissioners serves as chair of that committee, and that member must be approved by the majority of the commission. Chair Hill has been a member of the audit committee and serving that capacity, but she is ready to transition out of that role, and so we have a new member that must be appointed. We've asked Commissioner Perullo to serve on the audit committee, and he's agreed pending commission approval. So he would bring his experience from Explore Tualatin Valley and other organizations in this role. We think he'd be a great fit, but we will defer to you all as a commission to make that decision. If you deny that, I think it means Chair Hill stays on indefinitely. So I will let her, I will turn it over to her to see if she has any comments to add to it.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Perullo to serve on the audit committee as the commission representative and chair of the audit committee. And I am so grateful, Commissioner Perullo, for you stepping up to fill this really important oversight role for the commission, if you will take it. So
Wait, you didn't tell me there's an option you can stay on.
let's move with the vote. All right. I guess
I'll make that motion, yeah, to appoint Dave Perullo as that chair.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Awesome. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate your taking over that additional
Chair
duty.
Hill?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Grace.
Commissioner, I want to add something too. First of all, just a thank you, Liz, for stepping in. You've been doing it for at least a couple of years or more for it, but I know we've appreciated your commitment in doing this. It's a detailed, complex nature, and I'm not trying to scare Commissioner Perullo, but I think that attention to detail was really key. So thank you for that. And then just your strategic insight that you had from just outside experience and then bringing it back into parks. We really appreciate that. And then your help in helping us improve processes, and then just the transparency in it and your love for OPRD. So we really thank you for that time that you spent serving on it. And then for Commissioner Perullo, we're confident in what you're going to bring, your strengths and your perspectives. We've already experienced some great things with you. But just your willingness to step in, you didn't hesitate when approached by it, right? Right. But just coming in, and we are going to value your expertise and the stuff that you're going to bring to us. And we really think you're going to enjoy it. We're going to appreciate your energy that you're going to bring. And then we're here to help you with the transition and accommodate anything that you need during this time. So thank you for stepping up and taking it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Director Coons.
Okay. Well, let's move on. We're going to move on to the budget, and Sarah's going to bring us some really great information.
Pressure.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Coons, and members of the commission. I'm Sarah Head, OPRD's Chief Financial Officer, and I'm here to present agenda item 4A, which is the budget update for 25-27. And I'll also talk to you about 27-29 and beyond as much as I can. There we go. I like to start with where I left you. So I'm working in this all the time. And last commission meeting, we went through slides and talked about how things were looking. We also talked about short session and that there were some changes flowing through. Some of them I hoped for, others not so much. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, weird beep. So flowing through this short session, we had the typical adjustments, which are cost of living and bargaining agreement type things, so salary and wages for staff. We also had some reductions that were, I believe, statewide. So we were required to implement some of the changes that were on our reduction list in our published budget that you had last year. And I don't think that will be problematic for our agency because we were working so hard to beat our budget that I think we'll be okay. But in some years, that might be different if we were very tight. And we can talk about that more if you have questions. The other thing was we had a correction for Main Street, no issue at all. It was something that I did hope for in that process. And then the last one was we did have a reduction for lottery. As I mentioned, lottery didn't come through as strong as the forecast. So our budget got reduced for that accommodation. In the end, some were increases and some were decreases. So a lot of it netted out, but we never like to see revenue adjustments mid-period. Speaking of revenue, let's talk about park user fees some more. I brought you this graphic last meeting, and this just brings you along in the process. Last time it was year over year, 5.6 million up. Now it's 6.3 million. As I mentioned last time, the 15% that we saw on the slide was not a trend. We're seeing 13%. What's happening is we had some really unusual increases where you went from $5 to $10 on parking permits. And so it looked really large in the beginning. It's going to level off and then go up again for our new parks. So not sure how it will settle out yet, but as we expected, the park user fees are increasing. And we went through the timeline of all the changes in user fees last time. Now the overnight changes are in place, but we don't have a sample of that data yet. So I expect that this will have some fairly significant changes the next time we talk. I really need to see a whole summer to know how things are going, but we are doing the best we can with the data that we have at this time. So what I want to talk about this time is we've been focusing on non-dedicated funds, and that's because those are the funds that are not dedicated to grants or special programs like ATV. They are available for park operations. So when you look at our budget as a whole, you can't really see the health of our agency or how things are going. So that's why we bring you non-dedicated, and it's some work to dig out, but it is really the key to how we're doing for operations. So on this slide, we have actuals for 21-23 and 23-25, and then budget for 25-27, and then our estimate for 27-29. And I think we looked at this slide last time, and this budget for 25-27, we're going to work to beat. And then 27-29 is a very early estimate, just if we let things keep going. But what I want to show you is if we take this slide and we change 25-27 to forecast, you can see that the green bar is just a tiny bit taller than the orange. And that is what we have been working for in 25-27. Now, the way we are achieving that, where we are making it break even, possibly even a little better, is a lot of one-time adjustments, not things that we can necessarily repeat. Changes in construction, holding back vacancies, that type of thing. So what we're trying to do is hang on to our fund balance and be sure that the budget that we built for this biennium, that we beat it. We know we can beat it on the revenue side because not all of our changes were in it, but we also want to beat it on the expense side. As we put together 25-27 and we see one more month of actuals and one more month, we're seeing more data about our forecasting and working with that. There is as much change on the expense side, I think, as there is on the revenue side in this agency right now, because our leadership and our parks are working so hard to hold back and make changes. So we are working closely with, so the budget team works with our market research analyst, and we work with our communications team. And of course, Katie helps me with all sorts of timing on when things changed and when more things might change, so that we have all of the park's organizational knowledge and historical information combined. But even with that amazing team, I still don't have a lot of confidence in the model. We're still checking and rechecking, and every week we're trying something new. But we are watching it and looking at how this biennium is playing out and how does it affect the 29-27 budget that we're building, because that's what I'm prepping you for, right? It's the June meeting. But there are just so many changes. Then when we look forward and we say, okay, if 25-27 works out pretty well, then we have the budget estimate for 27-29. Now, remember, this is just like a first glimpse. We do not have all of the data yet. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And you haven't approved anything. You haven't approved any POPs. You haven't. So because I don't have all the data yet, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet either. This was an interesting meeting to prepare for because I was thinking, what is new since I last spoke to you? And there's a lot of unanswered questions still. What I do want to talk about, though, and be sure you're looking at, if I can get is 29-31 also, right? We expect that if we don't make some changes in 27-29, 29-31 will be harder, because don't forget that this biennium, we've made a lot of revenue changes, but they are not reaping the benefits for 24 months in the current biennium that we're operating in. In 27-29, we will see 24 months worth of all the changes that we are implementing now. So that is why 27-29, I expected it to be an easier biennium to work with. I don't have the same expectations for 29-31 as we see our expenses to continue to escalate, and the same plan for fees. When I come to you next month, it will be total budget that we discuss. I could bring you non-dedicated components, but I just wanted to put this in perspective and show you. We very often bring you the data about a scale of 250 million, and the agency's total budget is about 400 million. But that's when we add in LGGP and ATV and a lot of other things. And in this instance, we're only comparing current year revenue and expense in these green and orange. So don't be worried that the orange bar for the total budget is so much higher. It's because they have fund balance to spend from those programs. So in those programs, we're okay with it. In our non-dedicated, we really need to hang on to our reserves because that's for operations. But say in a grant program, you want to get that grant money out and support people. So let's talk about some risks, because I'm showing these in bar charts because we're looking at the relationship. That's really what I'm interested in at this point. The numbers bounce by 5 million or 10 million every day as we're looking at things. But the relationships of those numbers are important. These are factors that could switch the relationship between the green revenue and the orange expense column. And so I want to talk about these a little bit. The economy around us, right? Gas prices and other things, that plays a role. We are, based on historical data, making the assumption that customers will choose us. Instead of maybe booking airfare like they would have in the past, they will choose us and come to the parks. So typically we are substitutable and we stay pretty full as the economy ebbs and flows, and we're hoping that that holds steady. Purchase distribution. Last time I had a visual where I showed you that 12-month permits are selling more than I expected at this point. That has been an interesting phenomenon because I thought they would slow down after the big sales or the big surges in volume of purchases in November and December, but they really didn't. So our product mix or the distribution of what they buy is a little different. The other thing that's interesting and we're trying to figure out is out of state surcharges are there are more out of state customers than we expected. And in that, we have to really look at seasonality. Was that because it was March and it's spring break and we had lots of our friends from Washington or California or Oregon popping through? We don't know that yet, so we'll keep studying that. But because they have a service charge on them, there's a different revenue stream depending on the mix of our visitors and what choices they make. Parks, as I've mentioned before, had been very stable traditionally. And some of this data we weren't necessarily collecting. We had to make assumptions about how many of our parking permits were going to be sold with the out-of-state surcharge on them. So climate change, the thing that I lose sleep about is fire. For safety of our employees and our visitors, of course, and also because our campgrounds and keeping our campgrounds open and our visitors happy and coming and going is really key to this model. The revenue from campgrounds is significant. And so that's something that we have to really take into account as lottery doesn't support us as well as it did traditionally. And I haven't mentioned lottery. I don't have a slide for it because the new forecast isn't out since our last meeting. But as I've mentioned before, our reliance on lottery, we need to shift away from it a little bit. So that Mother Nature and the things that occur will be a bigger deal for us because it's all about people coming to our parks and paying their fees. The last one, you have it on your agenda upcoming, property acquisition. During the February session, OPRD was funded to purchase Abaquah Falls. When you saw the column for 27, 29, the green and the orange, there's nothing in there to make Abaquah Falls a park. That is something that is still a wild card in our model. And our leadership has some amazing ideas for it. And I'm hoping that those work out well and there's minimal impact on our budget. But those are things that we're working through as big wild cards in the budget process. So looking forward, and when we think about June, because I don't want to surprise you ever when I show up to talk to you, we are building the agency request budget right now, the pieces that we have, and working on current service level. That's a fairly scripted process. The agency doesn't have a lot of control on the assumptions. We can build the current service level budget and then make changes, reductions or additions as approved, but we have to build the basic just as a roll forward. There are currently unknown variables. The budget instructions came out in March, but we're still waiting on a lot of different components like state government service charges, and the labor data gets pulled and processed this Friday, so we don't have that. There are a lot of very large components that we just have estimates in. So when you think about the 27, 29 green and orange columns, a lot of estimates in there still. And I'm just watching the calendar. Many things say they're coming soon. So soon I will have that information. For the June meeting, there will be a budget presentation, and we'll start with current service level, maybe not too much information on that because it is scripted. And then we'll talk to you about policy option packages, also known as POPs. We have conceptually requested POPs for technology. As mentioned yesterday in our work session, at least one of our platforms is not exactly the customer experience we'd like to offer. And so we have requested just put in the concept. We have to notify about the concept and we have to work with the technology group at DAS because we are part of a bigger structure. So we'll have more information on that or its progress through the system when we talk again. And then you will vote to approve the agency request budget so that it can go on through the process. And in June, when we talk, it should be all solidified, run through the systems, and we'll have reports so that I should be able to answer questions that you have. Exec team has done a great job thinking about different scenarios and if this, then this. So as we have more concrete numbers for them, I will be sharing those and we will work through it. We know that it might be a little bit of a tough biennium, but we want to be prepared for the future and sustainability.
Thank you, Sarah. You always do such a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank
Are there
you.
any questions from commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Perullo.
Hi, Sarah. I always appreciate your presentations. There's a couple things long term that are on my mind, and I'm sure you're tracking them. That would be, I think, would be helpful for me and perhaps the other commissioners. One, on the hotel side and the restaurant side, we use something that's called PACE reports, where we compare acquisition of revenue year over year by month. And I'm really thinking a lot about what's going to be the change to parks as far as fee revenue from parking. I'm really curious with the change and everything because there's a big unknown. If I'm sure you're going to be doing like a month by month change of like following that revenue, because I'm going to be real curious to see what happens to parks and what consumer behavior is around that. That's one area I'm thinking about a lot. The other area I'm thinking about a lot is in regard to revenue for our overnight stays, because we've made significant changes in the cancellation policies and things of that sort. And I'm hearing some talk out there in regard to, I'm hearing mixed things and just in public conversations anecdotally that, hey, it's easier to get reservations now than it was in the past. So I'd really be curious how that revenue traces out year after year since we have such a different change. And then the third thing, and I'm just thought dumping, I'm sorry. The third thing is really, I'm so impressed by the work park staff is doing in regard to talking about alternative revenues and finding new revenue centers. And I don't know if there's a way for you to be indicating to us, that revenue that's value added that staff has worked very, very positively. So those are just three things that, I'm thinking about that I'd like to keep my eye on, and maybe the other commissioners also, but I really appreciate all your presentations. They're really helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Perillo. I am thinking about year over year on parking fees and overnight all the time. And our team is amazing. We're studying it by month. We're looking at locations. Many of the parking permit fees just went into effect a couple weeks ago now. And so we are studying that. We're very interested in that too, and consumer behavior and the out-of-state charges. So we will be watching that very, very closely because we're trying to figure out if the assumptions in our model are correct or if we need to revise them a little bit. For example, we've been considering changing the mix and increasing annual permit sales. And also out-of-state has been a constant monitoring and tweaking too. So we will certainly be monitoring that. And if that's something that the commission would like more detail on, then I'd be happy to receive those instructions and do that. And the other revenues, I'm not sure that I would be the best person to speak on that. So perhaps Director Coons or someone else could speak to that, because I see what has come through and what has come to fruition, but I'm not always involved on the other side. And it may be too early to speak to that too, because I know we're still working with the revenue group and looking at some other options.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And I'm just coming from, not from the oversight area, but also I think a big part of our charge as a commission is to tell stories, of success stories, in particular to be able to tell success stories of how seriously staff is taking the change and finding new revenues. So I mean, the more we can have to tell a story, that's really helpful for us.
Very, very good points, Commissioner Perullo. I see a hand up within the meeting host, and I'm not sure whose hand it is. Oh, Commissioner Conner.
Commissioner Perillo, just to add on the revenue piece, we are considering a pilot project around initial activities over the summer to evaluate some of those new revenue generating opportunities. And we'll definitely share more as that moves forward.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is what I've been paying attention to.
You'll be a great addition to the audit committee as well. All right. Anything else for Sarah? Okay, I don't see anything. Thank you again so much. Tough work. All right, moving on. JR, you're going to present something on the director's travel.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission. Again, J.R. Collier, Central Business Services. Gonna come to you with item 4B, which is the director's travel. We're required to provide you all with a travel summary for the director. I think you were provided that packet, though I could share it if anybody needed. Really, we're in kind of a funny space. So this is kind of a summary of last year in 2025. So Director Sumption. So I guess you guys all feel free to criticize her because she's not here. If there's anything you have questions wise. But yeah, just kind of a housekeeping that we give you that annual summary of reimbursements and travel requests and all that from Lisa's time last year. So we can entertain questions if any of you all have them. And otherwise, I think we take action to approve the transactions that you see in the summary for Director Lisa's assumption for 2025.
Thanks, JR. Any questions? I would entertain a motion on this.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Spence. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. I appreciate the very tight budget that you guys are working under, and that Lisa is really good about getting as much in as she can. And most of this travel is education related, and she's also spending a lot of time educating others around the country on the best practices and work that Oregon is doing. And so it's nice to have such a strong ambassador from OPRD representing us around the nation too. So thank you, Lisa, if you're listening from ODOT, for taking care of us and making sure that this stays minimal. All right, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving Director Sumption's financial transactions for calendar year 2025 signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. All right, seeing none, approved. Great. We are now moving on to the real estate portion of our agenda, and we're going to kick it off with Mynum and JR again.
This stays with me. So thanks, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission. We were now transitioned to 5A, which is a discussion of acquisition at the Mynum property. And it'll take me a second to find this in all the tabs I have open. Say, just a minute, please. Certainly. It's our organization. And this is a repeat of an informational we gave a while back about acquisition of a parcel at Lineham State Recreation Area. Reason is that acquisition had stalled out. We had appraised and actually did a review appraisal and then made an offer and could not come to consensus with the seller, Manulife, on a purchase price. And so at that time, that sale stalled out. It is now in partnership with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. We've restarted those conversations. They're helping facilitate some of the conversations. So just to give a quick overview, and then I'll get to more specific. Geographically, you can see LeGrand on the lower left and Joseph on the lower right, just for scale of where we're at in northeastern Oregon. The Willow Mountains kind of curve down to a little point there and come to an end right at Minam State Recreation Area. Minam is right at the confluence of the Minam and the Wallowa rivers. I will now pivot over to a little more specific map. There you go. And Minam is a property we have, and we've held it for a long time. We have a small campground there and day use area. It's a very popular recreation site along the Wallowa River, especially this time of year because everybody's rafting. This is a very popular put-in as it's really easily accessed right off the highway, Highway 82, for people to put in. And they can do either generally a single or sometimes a 2-night trip down to Troy rafting. So it's a very popular rafting excursion area. There's actually several guides that operate near or proximity to this property or put in right here on the boat launch. The acquisition from Manulife is our current property is in the green and white dashed borders. This new acquisition is in the yellow bracketed pieces. You can see the main parcel is contiguous to the Minam property, and then there's a corner crossing over to the second parcel. Manulife has implied for the acquisition to go forward. They actually they were insistent that we'd look at both parcels as this is their kind of last piece in this area. Right across the river is the Minam Wildlife Area acquisition. If you followed it at all, just made over the last few years. It's a 16,000 acre acquisition that the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation partnered with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to acquire that 16,000 acre parcel from Manulife to provide recreation and habitat conservation areas in this area. And it's actually a really great acquisition recreation wise. As it connects our park at Minam to the Eagle Cap Wilderness area, which is a very popular access up the Minam Canyon. Also align that once that acquisition happened, it creates kind of this band of public access and recreation opportunity from the Eagle Cap Wilderness area down through the Minam and Wallowa rivers to the Grand Ronde and really all the way to the Washington border. So it's a really pretty incredible area for the public to be able to do all manner of recreation activities. And we're pretty excited at all that energy. We feel like this piece would be kind of the nice way to tie the bow at the end of this acquisition. It's a property that Parks has shown interest in for at least the span of my career, so well over 2 decades. It's because of its proximity to our park and the opportunities it provides. It's a great area for natural resources and recreation, and there's a lot of history through that area. Part of the Nez Perce Historic Trail goes through this area, and so there's a lot of historical significance as well to this property. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, re-entered talks with the assistance of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation to kind of talk with the Manulife landowner and see if we could come to an agreement on a purchase price. And So I think the goal right now is that they are pursuing a reappraisal that is due to kick off soon. I think they're shooting for May or June. And then hopeful that that appraisal price will come in near to what the price that Manulife is asking is. So what we're seeking today is just to provide you information and take questions and set up as depending on how that appraisal stuff and all works out, we could likely or hopefully be coming to you in June asking to take action on this property. But I think we're excited. I would admit I have a little bias this property, having such familiarity with this area. If anybody has more bias on this property, it might be Matt Rippey, who has firmly acknowledged multiple times Minot is his favorite state park. So, but I'll happy to take questions about this go forward.
Chair Hill, a question.
Yes, please go ahead, Commissioner Griggs.
On the property that we currently own, what is the carve out in the lower right hand?
You know, there is a tiny little in holding, and what it is actually it's a small parcel that actually has the historic Minot Schoolhouse on it, and it is privately owned. Actually, used to be owned by a gentleman that worked for Parks, and had been, this property has been in his family for, oh gosh, well over 100 years. Like it's original. I think we actually, the state may have got some of this property from his family originally, and so, but that small parcel that has the historic schoolhouse on it is still privately held.
Thank you.
Question. Any other questions for JR on this? JR, do we feel like Manulife is ready and eager to sell, or any indication from them on change in heart?
Not to sound overly squishy on it. I'm not.
That's a squishy answer.
Yeah, I'm not overly optimistic that that they are feeling super negotiable. We are hopeful that maybe with this appraisal which even if it comes in under what they think they need out of it, that maybe that will help convince them that, hey, we've tried multiple ways of cutting this and the numbers are the numbers. So, but we'll see. They are actively participating in conversation, so that's encouraging. But yeah, I'm kind of my jury's out on this, on which way it'll go, to be perfectly honest. I think we're excited and hopeful that it'll happen, but there's been a lot of staffing changes in their organization as well. And so and even kind of in the different partnerships. So you know, we'll see. I guess I don't know that I would say I have a high degree of confidence, but I'm hopeful.
Well, grateful for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for working with us and supporting us in this path forward. So
yeah, they've been great partners. Just to call them out, they had actually one of their employees, Bill Richardson, that we've had a good working relationship with a long time, had actually retired and continued to volunteer to work on this to help kind of see it through a little bit as they brought their new person online. So they have a big commitment to trying to get this across the line as well.
that's great. Commissioner Spence, I see your hand is up.
Thanks. Hey, JR, is it, or Director Coons or Chair Hill, I guess, is it appropriate to, I wouldn't say lobby, but to ask them or encourage them, just because I have a few connections in Manulife?
I think that would be great. I can follow up with you independently, Commissioner Spence, on maybe some timing of that. I think as appraisals come forward, I think could be a great time to do some of that. Because they seem to have some confidence that appraisal is going to be significantly different this time, and I don't share, nor do our property staff nor do our partners necessarily think it's going to change that much. So yeah, I think that might be a really good time, is if we come back with that as like, hey, what are our next steps? So yeah, I'd gladly take you up on that when appropriate.
I'd second that, Commissioner Spence. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spence, for your help on this. All right, any other comments or questions before we move on to our next real estate piece? All right. Thank you, JR. Next up, we have Abaquah Falls with Tabitha.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Coons, Commissioners. My name is Tabitha Henriksen. I'm a property agent here with the Real Estate Services Group for OPRD. I'm bringing you two informational items today about Abaquah Falls. So the first of which, 5B, is in regards to a potential acquisition of a 40-acre piece of property from the Abbey Foundation of Oregon. This property contains a large waterfall that many are familiar with. As you can see, as the crow flies, it is pretty close to one of our area parks. This is what you see here in the green outline are other area state parks, but specifically this red dot is the approximate location of the Abaquah Falls parcels that we will be talking about today. And then this green shape here is Silver Falls. So as you can see, that's about 3 miles as the crow flies away from Silver Falls. Silver Falls Management Unit would be the potential management unit to field manage this if OPRD were to do so. However, the accessibility of this property, the topography of this property means the commute from that Silver Falls management unit over to that property would be nearly an hour because there'd be an up and around to get to this particular location. So this is a 40-acre piece on Abaquah Creek that contains this beautiful 92-foot drop into a basalt basin. As you can see in these photos here, it is a very lovely and very unique waterfall experience for those that are brave enough to risk its current trail and travel to get there. It is widely visited by recreators, even under private ownership currently. And there has been a lot of public support as the Abbey Foundation has made clear their desire to sell this property in the near future to keep this in with public access and potentially public ownership. So the Oregon State Legislature dedicated some funds recently for a general obligation bond sale specifically earmarked in order to help with the acquisition of this property and another surrounding property. And OPRD is currently doing due diligence work in order to investigate these properties and see if they are a good fit for OPRD ownership and address any concerns that we may find in that due diligence process. There is a deadline for that general obligation bond funding coming up April 30th, 2026 to confirm our desire to move forward. It is definitely, we will still be in process on our due diligence when we meet that deadline. However, it's our understanding that we can move forward with that due diligence in parallel with the initiation of the actual bond sale. And that is our current game plan. We will be coming back to you in the next couple of months to talk about an action item if staff recommend an acquisition of this property. But this provides you a little bit of a peek as to what those falls look like. This is in an area that is a mix of private timber, largely ownership, and public ownership. So in the yellow, you see the piece that we are currently talking about under 5B. And then we'll move now into 5C, which is this 160 acres owned by Weyerhaeuser Timber Holdings that were also approved as part of this general obligation bond package and instructions from the legislature. They have a desire for us to purchase both of these pieces of property. And are there any questions before I move on to 5C about the 5B parcel, this particular parcel here that has the waterfall on it, those 40 acres?
Tabitha, do you know how the Abbey Foundation received this plot of land to begin with?
I do not know, but they have owned it for over 100 years. through various entities associated with the Abbey. So, and they do own quite a bit of other land in this area that they manage for timber.
Interesting. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. I think I don't see any hands raised. So if you want to move on to the Weyerhaeuser
Okay.
piece.
Yeah, great. All right, so this 160 acres, you may notice is not directly adjacent to the 40-acre piece, but it does contain a road access that's necessary in order to get to the 40-acre piece and its trailhead. It also is a location that a lot of recreators utilize because it contains the continuation of Abacaw Creek, the upland of piece of Abacaw Creek that has several smaller falls on it. A lot of great photography opportunities and fishing in this area. So these two pieces were part of the legislative instruction that Parks received in order to do our investigative work about potential acquisitions. So a couple of quick photos of what that piece itself looks like. Like I said, smaller falls, but still some beautiful landscape and habitat in this area. So we are investigating both of those pieces. Similar deadlines apply to both as far as the GO bond funding itself. And then we will continue that due diligence that includes also research about access and potential maintenance costs, and then return to you in an upcoming meeting about potential action items for these two pieces of property. Let me know if there's any questions.
Any questions from anyone? All right. And I do want to make it clear for the public, especially as we're raising fees and looking at our own revenue streams and systems. This was not necessarily on our acquisition plan and map for this year. And so this was a legislative directive to be looking at Abaquah Falls. And it may be a costly endeavor, but it's something we're going to continue to do our due diligence on and look at the direction of the Oregon legislature. So just want to flag that for everyone who might be considering, why are we looking at this expensive piece of property when we've got other pieces that have risen to a higher priority for the system. But anyway, we can move on unless there's any questions. All right, I don't see any. Sorry, I think I unmuted myself. I muted myself. Thank you, Tabitha. Up next, we have the Blue Mountain piece, and I think Jeff, we have you for that.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission. I'm Jeff Walker, property agent for OPRD Real Estate Services, and bringing agenda item 5D, information for Blue Mountain Forest State Scenic Corridor easement to Idaho Power Company. You can see there on the map where we're located over in eastern Oregon. Blue Mountain Forest State Scenic Corridor is in Union County. It's a protected 20-mile stretch along the old Oregon Trail Highway between Dead Man's Pass and Spring Creek. The scenic corridor is dedicated in the late 1920s and 1930s, and it protects one of the few examples of mature evergreen forests along the I-84 between Ogden, Utah, and the Dalles of Oregon. Quite some time, OPRD has been in communication with Idaho Power Company to review the possibility of their proposed Boardman to Hemingway electrical transmission crossing over a portion of OPRD land. Crossing would be approximately about 250 feet wide segment of the Blue Mountain Forest Scenic Corridor. The proposed crossing is in the south end of the segment of the corridor there, as you can see on the map. It's south of Immigrant Springs, about 4 miles north of Hillgard Junction. The proposed is just for an overhead transmission lines that would cross over the OPRD land there, and there would be no steel supports on there would be none on OPRD lands, just the overhead line. Oregon Department of Energy and Energy Facility Council had to cite and issued site certificates for this protected area to have this option underneath OIR 345-022-0040. And that has been done. That's a requirement for proponents and facilities such as this to possibly seek other alternatives before proceeding, including this requirement over an easement of park land. Idaho Power states the alternative of obtaining, instead of this easement, over this segment of land would actually, they'd have to cross west and east and then back west over the highway, Interstate I-84 twice in this vicinity to avoid crossing the state park here. OPRD staff continue to express that basically from an aesthetic perspective, the utility crossing discreetly placed through the state scenic corridors you can see on the map there would be less intrusive than crossing the interstate twice. Staff would continue to initiate due diligence and activities in anticipation of return to the commission with hopefully a possibly action item in the near future for this proposed easement at this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any questions on this? This is information only at this point. All right. I don't see any. Wonderful. Easy. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we're moving on to agenda item 6A. We're moving into our community engagement portion. And we get the next 3 items with Michelle.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission. I'm Michelle Scalise, manager of the Grants and Community Programs section at OPRD. I'll be presenting, as Chair Hill noted, the next 3 briefs in your packet, all action items. I'm going to start with 6A, the Recreational Trails Program grant recommendations. The Recreational Trails Advisory Committee met virtually on March 10th and 11th, 2026 to evaluate and rank 34 grant requests totaling $3,535,650 with $2,065,768 available to award. There were 4 motorized project requests and 30 non-motorized project requests. Based on the evaluation criteria, the committee has recommended funding 17 grant requests for a total of $2,065,768. If approved, the recommended projects do have to go through a final review with Federal Highway Administration and must meet all OPRD and agency requirements prior to receiving a grant agreement. I just wanted you to be aware that the awards you approve today may be adjusted or may not result in an official award, depending on how the review with Federal Highway goes, cultural resources, NEPA review. So this is a slide depicting the 17 recommended grant requests. Of those requests, 4 are motorized for $448,325, and the rest are non-motorized at $1,466,957. So the action requested is commission approval of the ranking and distribution of RTP grants as recommended by the RTP Advisory Committee.
Wonderful. I would entertain a motion on the action requested.
I move approval of the ranking and distribution of the RTP grants as recommended by the RTP Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Can I get a second?
I also
second that.
Ooh, I'm going to go with Commissioner Condor on this one. Thank you, Michelle. This has been wonderful, and all the hard work that you guys put into this. So we will go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor for approving the ranking and distribution of the RTP grants signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Seeing none, great. Wonderful, approved.
Great. Thank you, Chair Hill and commissioners. Okay, on to the next item. So for the record, Chair Hill, Director Coons, commissioners, I'm Michelle Scalise, manager of the Grants and Community Programs section at OPRD. I have for you today item 6B, the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant recommendations. The Oregon Outdoor Recreation Committee met virtually on April 3rd, 2026 to evaluate and rank 10 LWCF grant requests totaling $8,942,865 with $11,458,464 available to award. So that's a good situation for us to be in. Based on the evaluation criteria, the committee has recommended funding all 10 grant requests. The balance of the funding will be utilized for necessary project adjustments made available in the next grant cycle or used for eligible OPRD projects. If approved, the recommended projects go through a final review with the applicants and NPS. They must meet all LWCF and agent requirements prior to receiving a grant agreement. The award you approve today may be adjusted and or may not result in a final award. So here's the distribution of the 10 LWCF grant requests throughout the state, totaling the $8,942,865. And the action requested is commission approval of the ranking and distribution of the LWCF grants as recommended by the Grant Advisory Committee and authorization to award funds as they are available from the National Park Service.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions on this or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the ranking and distribution of the LWCF grant awards as recommended by the Grant Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. Can I get a second on the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Spence. All those in favor of approving the ranking and distribution of the LWCF grant awards signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Hearing none, it is approved. And thank you for the Grant Advisory Committee's work on all of this stuff. It's a lot, and there's some really great projects. So thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Make sure to convey our appreciation.
I will do, Commissioner Hill, that we definitely would not be able to achieve any of this without our committee volunteers. They come with quite a bit of knowledge and add quite a bit of information to the process. So I appreciate that, and we'll pass that on.
Yeah. All right. I think we have one more with you, ATV.
Yes, you get one more with me. Yes, final one. Chair Hill, Director Coons, Commissioners. For the record, Michelle Scalise, Grants and Community Programs Manager. Finally, here today bringing forward agenda item 6C, the Altering Vehicle Committee member appointments. So the ATV committee includes 16 voting members and one non-voting member representing agencies and user groups. We are seeking to fill two roles, an at-large ATV user and an ODOT representative. The at-large position also serves on the grant subcommittee reviewing ATV grant applications. Staff conducted outreach, interviewed 3 applicants for the at-large position, and the panel unanimously recommended the selected candidate. And then with the ODOT representative, ODOT puts forward their recommended representative. So the recommendations are Tim Custer for the at-large representative, and Tim brings extensive expertise over 2 decades of volunteer involvement with OPRD. Tim currently serves on the ATV Highway Access Committee, which is separate within the same group, but different than this position, and also serves on the OPRD Audit Committee. He is a lifelong ATV rider, which gives him good strong user perspective. And he brings both experience and focus on supporting and growing responsible motorized recreation and representation throughout the state. And besides that, he's a great guy. And then Colleen O'Hogan is who we are recommending for the ODOT representative. Colleen is a roadway safety program manager at ODOT with relevant ATV experience. And she was recommended by ODOT and brings strong safety and policy expertise. And her expertise will strengthen coordination between our agencies and support the committee's safety focus. So the action requested today is we're requesting your appointment of the recommended ATV Advisory Committee members.
Thank you, Michelle. I've worked with Tim on the audit committee for the last few years, and he's really a great addition. And his service for OPRD is really committed. So that's great that he's nominated for this. Any other comments or questions before we move to a vote? All right, I would take a motion on this.
I'll move approval of the two names appointed for the ATV Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Izumi. All those in favor of approving the appointments that Michelle laid out for us signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Seeing no opposition, they are appointed to the ATV Advisory Committee now. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you again for all your hard work on these grants. It's really fun to get money out the door. And there's one in particular on the rec trails that's up the North Umpqua. And I know for a fact, there's so many volunteers that come out to work on that project. And, you know, the amount of money they're getting isn't significant, but it's going to help make a big difference for the fire damage that was done during the Archie Creek fire to open up that trail and access for our communities. That's going to have ripple effects economically in the community too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hill.
Commissioner Perullo.
Thank you. Hey, Michelle, just real quick on RTP and LWCF. If it moves through, when do you think announcements will be made on those?
So we do after the Commissioner Perullo, after the commission approves after this meeting today, we'll let them know that they've made it past that step. And so they generally get an announcement, but with the caveat that there are some things that we need to do before we can get to an agreement. So they'd be hearing pretty soon. And we also let them know after like the committee recommendations what their rankings were. So they have a pretty good idea that they're moving through this process. But this right here is a pretty big step for those applicants to hear that the commission has approved. So after this, it's just logistics and tying up loose ends and finding out if we need to do any cultural work or things like that.
Yeah, we have several very excited local partners that
Good.
are waiting. So thank you for your hard work.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, Chair Hill and commissioners, for your support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. So next up on our agenda, we have the heritage section with Ian. And just to flag in terms of timing, I'm thinking we can get through heritage section and we have nothing for park development, and then we can take a 10-minute break before we roll into the rulemakings, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, great. All right, Ian, you're up.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Coons, and members of the Oregon Parks and Recreation Commission. My name is Ian Johnson. I am the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and today I'm presenting Agenda Item 7A, the Heritage Section Brief. Start with the Oregon Heritage Conference, which is next week, April 29th through May 2nd in Woodburn and nearby communities. The conference will bring together participants from museums, preservation archives, libraries, main streets, tribes, and public history fields. It's going to be a great event. Of course, you're all invited, although you missed the early registration period. That was ended yesterday, but I'm sure we could find a spot for you if you'd like to attend. It's a great event. It will include the Oregon Heritage Excellence Awards, Oregon Humanities Program, and numerous sessions, workshop tours, and networking opportunities. I would like to emphasize that this particular event, thanks to the work of Curry Gill, our Heritage Grants and Outreach Coordinator, and her team, it largely pays for itself with almost all the hard costs covered by local partners. They contribute venues, technical support like IT, materials. We also receive conference sponsorship. So if you look at the program, you'll see those sponsors. We also receive registration and tour fees. And for this current conference, we got a $5,000 grant from the National Trust. past. And we have actually had some years that did more than break even, made a small, modest amount of funds. So this is a large project, but one that is mostly self-sustaining. So wanted to point that out. Oregon Main Street is one of our main big programs. You may be familiar with it, and we're excited to announce that Medford, North Bend, Port Orford, and Reedsport have advanced the designated Main Street status. Recognizes their capacity to strengthen their historic downtowns using the national Main Street approach. It is a national program. We administer it locally, and it strengthens downtowns by building on each community's unique identity and cultural resources. We support that by offering technical assistance and networking. We have an annual conference regularly and funding when that is available. These several communities are going to be moving forward in their Main Street journey, and we'll be providing more focused support for them. We have quite a bit of information on this program on our website, including our annual report, if you would like to look at that. We also, going on more on the Main Street program, we received a Oregon Tourism Commission Award, the Oregon Prosperity Award for our statewide leadership in downtown revitalization and community support. So we're very, very proud of that. Since 2008, the program has driven significant economic impact, investing over 134 million as of 2021. And again, that program provides free technical assistance and coordination to a network of over 100 communities across the state of many different sizes. And then we have a new coordinator for that program. Amy Kiefer is the new state Main Street coordinator. She brings national experience supporting rural and tribal communities and a design background focused on preservation and placemaking. There's a more complete bio on her within your heritage brief. Always like to kind of give a highlight of what we're doing with our recognition programs, including the National Register. Our most recent addition is the Arthur H. Devers House in Northwest Portland. And it's recognized for its Victorian architecture, but also the business acumen of civic leader Arthur Devers. He co-owned Closet and Devers, one of the Pacific Northwest early major coffee and tea importers. So way before Starbucks, he made his name in that industry. And he used his influence to shape a lot of civic projects, including the 1905 Lewis and Clark Exposition in Oregon. An interesting current project we're working on is focusing on women's labor history, and we expect to be able to announce some associated properties listed in the National Register within the end of the year, including the Edith Yang House in Eugene. It's associated with its namesake, who was a successful architect in the post-war period. And that is the end of my commission brief, and I'd be happy to take any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
This is all really wonderful. Great news. Good job, Ian and team. Any questions, comments? None. A quiet bunch today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. I think everybody just wants to take a break. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and plan to take a break? We can, if folks are open to it, let's do 15 minutes and we can come back at 11:15. All right, so we'll go ahead and adjourn or take a break.
Right.
Yeah, I saw it.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield. Oh. I just want to make sure that you can hear and the ability to speak to
A lot of that long term.
go to the next agenda
I
item.
don't wanna get. Targeted to me.
Yes.
What's it fun stuff?
If you want to try unmuting and testing your audio.
They're not needed.
Mr. Mayfield, if you want to unmute and test your audio, the moment that you're able to speak for the next agenda item.
Maybe they took a break.
It has to be unmuted when we do our presentation.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield, we can hear you now, so you are good if you want to mute, and then we will begin in about 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. We'll unmute, she wants you to mute it again.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for allowing us to do this.
I gotta get back to that other thing.
All right, if we can all come back, that'd be great. We're at 11:16. Okay, I think we've got everyone. Dave, he's probably listening. All right, we are going to, great. Hi, Commissioner Perullo. We are going to go ahead and reconvene. We are currently on agenda item number 9, rulemaking, and we're going to go ahead and start that rulemaking with the petition for rulemaking regarding extra vehicle fees. Katie, you had mentioned there was public comment. Is that on this rulemaking or a different one?
Correct. Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, Katie Duffy are here with agenda item 9A. I will provide a brief background on the current rule and then introduce Dave and Linda Mayfield, who are here to discuss the petition that they submitted. So this is a petition on extra vehicle fees. The current rule requires that extra vehicles in campgrounds pay an additional rental rate of $10 to $30 per vehicle when the extra vehicle is driven into the campground and remains overnight. Currently, our extra vehicle fee is $10 as charged. So, Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield, if you would like to unmute and turn your video on, you're welcome to share your reasoning behind the petition and what you're requesting.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, this is David.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Did we
Yes,
do
we
it?
can hear you. Yep.
Okay. First of all, I understood that JR was going to do a little presentation and explain the background. Is that not right?
JR, do you want to go ahead and address that, or Katie?
Yes, I can certainly jump in and give a little background on here. Yes, absolutely. Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, J.R. Collier. A little background on this rule. Our extra vehicle rules have varied over the years. I think Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield will discuss concerns with current rules and their proposal of a change. We have altered our extra vehicle rules on what vehicles are waived or not charged several times. So in 26 years that I've worked for the agency, we've altered this rule a handful of times in different directions as to what's waived or not. We formally, probably the most recent one, and it's been a long time, probably more than a decade or so ago, we had a waiver for motorhomes towing an extra vehicle if it was just 2 people and or not towing, sorry, driving a second car in with their motorhome if it was just a couple and that was not assessed. That had got complicated, as extra vehicle rules always are, because people find ways or ask or don't, or they were not saying, oh, it's only 2 people, but it was not. And so there was some enforcement issues. So there was a decision to actually apply the extra vehicle rules to all vehicles at that time. And then they made an exception saying, unless that vehicle was towed into the park. And so if it was attached to the motorhome or tow apparatus, then that is a waiver. In this instance specifically, I think there was concerns of if staff were applying that rule evenly as far as if somebody disconnected that vehicle just right before coming to the booth, we should be also still waiving that fee if that car has a tow bar on the front or something along those lines. There was some concerns that maybe that wasn't happening. We've actually addressed that with our field staff to make sure they're applying that rule in the spirit of it. Is if somebody had disconnected just prior to getting to the park, we didn't think it was necessary that you have to see them physically tow the car past the booth and disconnect it. So we've kind of clarified that. But I think the Mayfields have suggestions for a different rule change in addition to that. But yeah, we just that context of we've had changes to this rule before, and the current version was adapted in that way to try to simplify it in the way of that for several reasons we have a goal, a reason we charge extra vehicle fees. It's to reduce some of the impact on the site of multiple vehicles. It may be that and can be that we are trying to address a thing we've seen recently with demand. Going back to some of our conversation yesterday of sites are in high demand. It's hard to make a reservation. Sites get snapped up early. We've seen an uptick recently because of that in the last several years of if there's only one site available, people still reserve it and they just all show up. and well, maybe they would have got 2 sites if 2 had been available. If they only see one's available, they take it anyways. So our extra vehicle fees help with that in trying to keep that overuse of the resource in check a little bit. So that's part of the reason. And there's a revenue component, right? We assess a fee on the extra vehicles. So there also is that revenue component. Extra vehicle fees are common in many states, while not all do it. So, at least our neighboring states do. So that's just a little bit of context of kind of the extra vehicle rules that we currently have and maybe some of the history of it, and then specifically kind of leading up to some of the issues that the Mayfields have, but I certainly don't want to speak on their behalf. So I think they can kind of explain more of their reasoning and thoughts on what they're going to propose.
Great. Thank you, JR. Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield, do you want to go ahead and present?
Well, sure. Thank you. We're not really asking for any modification in any
Okay, that's your presentation.
extra vehicle fees or anything else. Linda has a small presentation.
Chair Hill and members of the commission, the intent of our petition in the agenda summary has been misunderstood and misrepresented. Our petition is based on numerous discussions with park rangers, JR, Katie, and other staff members. What we are asking for is a common sense approach. A motorhome 26 feet or longer should be considered a camping unit, not a vehicle. One passenger vehicle should be allowed to be driven in. Therefore, there would be no additional revenue loss, as these vehicles would have been towed in at no extra cost anyhow. Staff cites that currently all vehicles driven into the park and remaining overnight must pay an extra vehicle fee. If towed in, no fees required. For example, a motorhome who is booked for 10 nights, once they pass through the gate, that's another $100 if they don't have a tow bar or are not hooked up. There are many safety reasons for not hooking a towed vehicle up. We are seniors and our son has to take time off work to help us. The carpooling and wear and tear on the campground roads in Katie's summary doesn't apply to our petition. Staff gave us the opportunity to offer a better choice to administer and achieve objectives. That's all we're trying to do. Staff provided neighboring states' fee schedules. We also provided states that recognize motorhomes as camping units and are allowed to drive in one passenger vehicle at no extra charge. There are several reasons why a Class A motorhome owner would prefer to drive in their passenger vehicle, especially when they live local. Avoid complicated procedure of connecting and disengaging the drivetrain, disconnecting and engaging drivetrain once at the campground when driving just a short distance. Added driving safety. Class A motorhomes wouldn't be accommodating additional length on the highway or at the campgrounds. Avoid possible bottleneck in campground when unhooking. Staff doesn't have data on Class A or Class C motorhomes that bring in a non-towed passenger vehicle. We estimate about 30% of motorhomes would be affected by this fix. Reservations currently don't have any way of listing a towed vehicle. Our suggestion for a possible fix: motorhomes count as a camping unit, just like trailers. Nobody who owns a large Class A drives it in and out of the park daily, which is why they bring a passenger vehicle. I'd also like to talk about the economics and how unfair it is to those on limited income. The cost to setting up a towable vehicle: first, you have to purchase the vehicle, which is at least $10,000. Then you have a tow bar at $600. To set the tow bar system on a towable vehicle is another $1,200. The braking system is $500, and the electric lights conversion is $200. Requiring a motorhome to have a towable vehicle is very unfair to local campers that wish to enjoy the camping experience. In conclusion, many campground loops are congested and don't accommodate large motorhomes going in and out of it daily. It's not safe to do so. It makes more sense to allow motorhomes 26 feet or larger to count as a camping unit and bring in one passenger vehicle. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Yeah, I just, the whole idea of this is not to try to stop people from bringing in extra vehicles. We don't want extra vehicles in the campground either.
No, when our son
All we're
visits
trying
us,
to do is bring in one vehicle that we can use to drive from our campsite to the store. Like if we have to go to the store, or if we have to go to the doctors or anything else, that's the only reason to bring in a second vehicle. You can't take a motorhome out of the campsite every day or every other day, or even, you know, once you park there, you've disconnect, you're pretty much there for the duration.
we're 42 feet.
And to ask for a $10 fee every day just because you're driving a vehicle in is really kind of nuts. It's not, doesn't make any common sense. We live less than 15 miles from the park that we go to most of the time, and to hook up to the RV and tow it over there and then disconnect once we get there is just, it just doesn't make any sense. And now you're talking about the saving money on gasoline and everything else, and that people are going to start using the parks more and more. I think you're not thinking this out. I don't think that rule was ever thought out the way it's written right now. The easiest way would be just to set it up with the reservation system, that put your second vehicle in when you're registering your motorhome, or just have it stamped or something like that it goes along with the motorhome. I don't know. There's got to be a lot of ways to figure it out. I just asked for the commission to use some common sense.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayfield.
If we have anybody on the commission that even RVs, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayfield.
Thank you.
Katie, did you have any other presentation on this before the commission discusses?
Yes, I will provide a little more background on the current rule. We've shared the current rule, and then in your brief, we did provide some examples from other states where extra vehicle fees are charged unless towed in, or in some states, every vehicle pays a park entry fee, even if you have a camping reservation. So those were some examples that we did see from other states. We also provided our revenue that is obtained from extra vehicles. In 2024, we had a $7 fee, and then in 2025, it changed partway through to $10. We also added the ability on our reservation system to pay for an extra vehicle ahead of time when you're making your reservation. So those two changes changed the number of extra vehicles. Mr. May and Mrs. Mayfield are correct. We do not have any data about if in an RV site it is a motorhome or a trailer. That's not something we record, so we could not tell you if this position were to be moved forward into rulemaking, what the revenue impact would be specifically. So there are a few options the commission has. You can choose to accept the petition and open rulemaking. If you do so, there are some specific criteria that under the Administrative Procedures Act, you need to consider when making a determination about one of these options. The criteria, there are 6 criteria that must be considered. The continued need for the existing rule, any complaints or comments about the rule received from the public, the complexity of the rule, the extent to which the rule overlaps, it duplicates or conflicts with other state or federal rules, and the extent feasible local government regulations, the degree in which circumstances have changed since the rule was adopted, and 6, the legal basis for the rule. So in considering those, you have the option of denying the petition for rulemaking, directing staff to review the rule and come back with recommendations to address the concern, or open rulemaking to change the rule as proposed. I'm happy to answer questions from the commission on these options.
Thank you, Katie. Commission, I guess I put it before you. Do you have questions for JR, Katie, the Mayfields?
Chair Hill, I have a question.
Go
Question
ahead,
for Katie.
Commissioner Griggs.
Have there been any substantial changes in circumstances since the last rulemaking?
Not that I am aware of. We have reviewed this rule internally a number of times, because it is a rule that we often have people concerned about whether an extra vehicle should fit. There are a lot of different options that people have provided about whether it should be every site has 2 vehicles, or it is one of the rules that we receive a lot of questions about. So staff have reviewed, and as we've had discussions, there are other options. We can't find one that is as easy to administer for our staff and addresses the concerns around congestion in parks.
Commissioner Condor.
Yeah, I had a question about this as well. And to answer the gentleman's question, yes, I am on the board. I'm a commissioner, and I also have a Class A motorhome, a diesel pusher, 40 feet long. And I do tow with it. But my question would be, if we've got a 1-ton pickup truck pulling a 40-foot fifth wheel, and they bring those 2 vehicles in, they're not charged the extra vehicle. But if the vehicle is behind the RV, it's being charged.
Exactly.
I don't understand that, because we've got an RV and a vehicle that we're not charging for, and then we have a vehicle and an RV that we are charging for because it happens to be behind it.
Commissioner Condor, we do not charge if the vehicle is towed. We only would charge if they're driven in separately. So if it's a motorhome towing an extra vehicle, there is not a charge. It's only when it's driven in separately.
Right, but and like the gentleman also said, I also disconnect when I'm waiting in line, and like in Honeyman or some of those parks like that, because I know we're going to be there for a bit. So why not just disconnect while you're there, because you're not going to be blocking the camp loop unhooking later. So, and I've come across that as well. It's like, well, was that towed in or not? And there is a lot of problems there, and you're having to work on the honor system. So I don't know. I don't really know how we fix that, but it is definitely an issue.
Yeah, Commissioner Condor, I think that's right. I think that's where I in my earlier conversations, that's where I mentioned, I think that's we're trying to make sure and clarify with staff that if a car is towed and has the tow apparatus, because even once you've disconnected, it's clear that that vehicle has a tow apparatus on the front generally, that our staff should be honoring that waiver if it's that vehicle. And just because you disconnected in the day use or disconnected because you fueled up right before the park or something, that we've clarified with our field folks that they should be honoring that as still as the waived vehicle that it's towed. It's more of we assess the fee if that second vehicle is driven in separately, that it's not a towed vehicle. And an example, and I would say just anecdotally from having worked in parks a lot, there's a lot of motorhomes that don't have a towed vehicle, even long ones, because maybe they stay in either two at a time or they just don't have them. So it's not always that they have a towed or secondary vehicle. Oftentimes that extra vehicle is truly an extra vehicle. Their family comes to stay with them or and just drives in separately. And so I think that's where that line is recognizing that sometimes those extra vehicles are truly just another group of people coming in to stay. And so I think you're certainly right that is a possibility, that it's just that second car. And it was pre-disconnected. We've tried to clarify that with our field staff as interpretation of the tow rule. But I also, yes, I think that what you're saying is the crux of what the Mayfield's petition is that they are requesting that we consider a motorhome as a camp unit similar to a trailer, and that by default, a second vehicle would be allowed at no charge is I think what that request is.
Yes.
I think we're muted anyway.
You muted it? Shouldn't. They might have questions.
They're all muted.
Commissioner Hill, you're muted.
Are we muted?
Mr. Mayfield, you're not muted. Liz, you
I
are
am muted.
Oh.
You are not muted. We can hear you.
Oh.
But I'm going to go ahead and recognize Commissioner Perullo right now. So we'll let him speak and then we can turn back to you.
Thank you, Chair Hill. First, I'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield for spending time with us today and bringing something to the commission to review. We value the partnership with all of our park users. A couple questions for staff. How often is staff dealing with this? I mean, is this a continual? Is this once in a while? I mean, how often is it a position where staff feels like they may be in a confrontational position with our travelers? Is my first question. My second question is just to understand is that the other concern is that there is fear of people trying to avoid park fees by saying they are a unit where they may not already be there. They just want to avoid paying the fee. Is that two things I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'll jump in and answer or attempt to answer Commissioner Perullo. So we did after the Mayfield submitted their petition, I talked to our regional managers and some of our ops folks to discuss what our recommendation is, because you see at the bottom of the briefing, staff's recommendation was to not open rulemaking. I would say staff deal with this constantly, extra vehicles, and I think Katie threw the stat up, but it's what was the total number of extra vehicles in a year is 106,000 extra vehicles is what has been registered just last year. So I would say staff deal with extra vehicle administration constantly, and to be perfectly honest, I think that's the motivation of why staff would prefer to keep the rule as is. Altering that rule makes it harder and harder to administer. And as you say, well, so now does the extra vehicle rule apply now or not? And it's an additional contact with the visitor to collect or to clarify. So it's not that it's untenable if we were to make this rule change. It's certainly an option, I think staff, again, it's the original intent of why we went to what the current policy is, was the amount of time it was taking to administer extra vehicle policy, and whether that was a valid waiver or whether they had to pay, and it was creating multiple contacts in the field. And this was an intent to clarify and simplify that policy, which was that vehicle has a tow apparatus, it shouldn't pay. Boom. Everything else is assessed an extra vehicle fee. And in talking with our staff, that would continue to be their preference as the easiest to administer. Having said that, if you all, as our commission, choose to go down a different path, there are ways to administer it a different way, but it would certainly require more touch and more time of staff, I think, to administer, or at least that's the opinion of our staff. And we did talk, like I said, to our field managers, just to kind of get input on what their thoughts were and how we would administer it if that change was to occur. So and so there are options, and one that the Mayfield suggested, right? It could be by length, 26 feet. It's just then, guess what? People, if you believe it or not, people with a 25-foot motorhome or a 24-foot motorhome will say, well, I don't want to pay. There's always somebody right on the outside of a rule that's unhappy, because it doesn't apply to them and they'd like it to. And I completely understand and empathize with that, but that ends up being one of our issues with virtually every rule we have. And so I think that's our challenges for our field staff to administer. So I think that's our stance, and why their preference was to try to keep the status quo. But again, we all will defer to guidance from the commission.
Cool. JR, I have two more questions, please. I'm 5'11". I've been saying I'm 6 foot my whole life, so I get about the currently in operations, other than using the tow apparatus as the indication of the vehicle. Is there a tagging process that's happening that tags that vehicle either with a hanger or something of that sort, so that the park users have to display? That's my first question. I'll give you my second one, and then I can be done. In the Mayfield's note to us, they cited several states, Michigan, Virginia, and Georgia, that recognize motorhomes as camping units. And did staff benchmark those as far as to confirm or not confirm for commission? Thanks.
I don't know that we verified individually with those states that that's really their policy. I would take them at their word that that's correct. I guess the counter thought on that is, to some extent, is if you say, and we've addressed this when we reviewed this a few years ago, we talked about extra vehicle policy and the option of not having an extra vehicle fee at all. The complaint from visitors are, so that site has multiple cars, we only have one, we should get a discount. And so there's a chase game always applying, where we're trying to figure out, again, somebody always sees a different way they want the pie cut. And so I think it's just how you interpret that and try to be the most fair to the most people. As far as the tagging system goes, currently most of our parks do give a tag for the duration of the stay upon registration, or at least recorded into the system so they know which vehicle belongs to which site and license plate. I hedge a little bit on there as we start to modernize our system, that tags are becoming less important because of our software is picking up license plates, and we don't have the same need to do hard copy printing of stuff. But yes, generally, if that vehicle specifically gets registered and then is recorded as in the site for the duration of the stay.
Thank you, Commissioner Perullo. Commissioner Condor?
Yeah, my 2 cents here would, I would deny this petition for rulemaking on this, just because the matter of fact is I'm a person who uses this system. I have an RV, I bring a tow vehicle. Sometimes I don't bring a tow vehicle, and sometimes my daughter will come over. And the staff that I've encountered over the last 10 years has been very good to work with. And they'll walk by our campsite and see that the front of my Jeep is set up with a tow rig, and they won't say anything to me about it. And then they'll see my daughter's car and they'll see it won't have one, and you need to pay that. So I think the system, to me personally, has been working great the way it is right now. So, yeah, that's just my 2 cents as a person who uses this system.
Thank you. I see a hand up in the meeting room. I'm not sure who that is. Is it Commissioner Graves?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Yes, that was me. I also am inclined to deny this petition for rulemaking, although I do hear you may feel concerns about the hassle of getting that tow bar on. But if they are allowed to disconnect and not be charged for that extra vehicle, that does enable them to leave the campground and go do what they need to do. So as long as we have assurances that staff are consistently being trained and retrained to know that if there is a tow bar, there is not an extra vehicle charge. So I will be inclined to deny the petition, just so you know where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. From the commission, is there any further discussion or questions on this before I would entertain a motion on which way everybody wants to go?
I'll tell you one thing, if you have a Class A motorhome right now and you're filling it and you're putting fuel in it, the $10 a day thing, it's not even shouldn't even be an issue. It cost me $525 to fill mine up yesterday. So
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Yeah. It's not funny. It hurts, but
But we're only going 15 minutes from our house.
Yeah, 15 minutes from our house.
We don't have to fill it up like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And installing over a $2,000 tow bar so that the park ranger doesn't have to be inconvenienced. It's BS.
Mayfield,
Could you please mute the Mayfields? I've not recognized them. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Condor. Did you finish your comments? All right. Is there anything else on this? All right. I would go ahead.
The petition for rulemaking.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second that.
So the motion on the table is to deny the request for opening rulemaking, the petition to open rulemaking to amend extra vehicle fee requirements for motorhomes. I just want to acknowledge Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield. I appreciate you bringing this before the commission. I understand that this is something that's frustrating to you. I'm not sure that it rises to the level of opening rulemaking for the state and for our staff to consider. We haven't heard that this is a major issue beyond this particular moment. So, I apologize for that, but we are going to go ahead and take a vote on the proposed, of the motion that we have before us. So all those in favor of denying petition to open the rulemaking signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? All right, seeing none, thank you. It is
Chair,
denied.
before we leave that item, if I may, this is Steve, counsel. My understanding is that the commission has found a continued need for the existing rule and that although perhaps a little bit complex, the complexity of the existing rule is functionable and that circumstances haven't changed since we adopted the rule in a way that led to reconsideration.
That is correct. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't say it as eloquently as you did. I appreciate that. All right, well, thank you. All right, moving on. We are on agenda item 9B.
Good
Sorry,
morning.
this is the the UAS use in parks and the ocean shore.
Great, thank you, Chair Hill. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick. Perfect. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Hill, Deputy or Director Coons and members of the commission. My name is Robert Ellison. I am a policy advisor with Oregon State Parks and Recreation Department. I will be presenting today on agenda item 9B, request to adopt USA rules, operation rules in Division 10 and Division 21. Katie Gauthier, our external relations manager, will also be presenting with me just to help answer any questions that anyone might have. So a little background on this rule. Back in 2021, the Senate had directed OPRD to adopt rules for UAS use in state parks with an emphasis on protecting park resources. The initial rulemaking that we started was paused to define or to refine our approach and make sure that we were bringing in the appropriate uh, people and such to look at our impacts on the recreation as well as impacts to our parks. And so in 2023, 2024, we formed a internal work group that refined that criteria to improve the alignment with resource protection and operational capacity. In 2025, we reopened rulemaking with a new rack and incorporated a simplified and more manageable framework. We have now went through the public comment period as well as had a public hearing, and then we took all of the feedback from those two things as well as any comments from the rack and refined our draft rules and are now presenting to the commission for consideration. Some of the key concepts of the draft rules as presented is that UAS operation will be prohibited unless designated. Their operation will only be allowed in those designated areas. And designated operation areas are locations that are identified and published on the website by OPRD. And this will be in coordination with our natural resource teams as well as park managers and field managers to help make those decisions on those operation areas based off of resource impacts, visitor safety, user conflict, and operational capacity within each one of our park properties. This does allow us that adaptive management approach that we've been looking for within this, recognizing that our parks as well as our visitation changes on a year-to-year basis. And though we may identify one park as a good area to allow UAS operation, given conditions and changing environment, the next year it might not be a good area to allow that. And so just giving us the ability to be flexible on where those drone operation or UAS operation areas are. A permit pathway does still remain within this rulemaking, and so we have a variety of permits that OPRD issues, whether that be scientific research permits, commercial use permits, special use permits, and so that permit pathway still remains for authorization outside of those designated UAS areas. The rules do also have built-in future tools that allow us to manage UAS operation on a more complex scale as we get to that phase of implementation. So some of those future tools is UAS pass system, which would allow us to manage drones on a day-by-day basis or a seasonal basis, maybe limit the amount of UAS operations in a single park on a given day, and allow us to require people to acknowledge our rules around UAS operation before receiving that permit for the day or that pass for the day. Do you want to jump into a review of the public comment? So our public comment period was open from January 1 to February 15th. We did receive 441 comments. You can see there on the screen kind of the separation there of what those comments were. 345 of those comments, 78% supported allowing UAS operation with restrictions in our state parks. 12% or 53 comments opposed any restrictions on UAS operation, and 43 comments or 10% supported banning UAS operations entirely. I do want to go a little bit more in depth there on those supporting UAS operations with restrictions, just to give you a better context of what those comments were. Of those 78%, 206 commenters supported kind of maximum level of restrictions while still allowing them within our parks. 112 supported moderate restrictions and 17 supported minimum restrictions. So of those people who did want to allow them, that kind of breaks it out of what they're looking to see in our rules, making sure that we continue to manage them appropriately. Some of the themes of the comments that we saw was concern around wildlife and habitat protection. Those included some nesting areas, breeding areas, or sensitive habitats, particularly concern around disturbance in protected areas and maintaining natural resource integrity. We also saw comments regarding visitor experience and public enjoyment. Those comments reflected concerns around noise, visual disruption, and impacts to the quiet, non-mechanized park experience. There was some support for designated opportunities, but not at the expense of existing visitor uses. We heard comments about enforcement and implementation. These were questions about how the rules would be enforced and if the field staff had enough capacity to be able to manage that use, as well as interest in having very clear, simple rules that are easy for both the visitors and staff to understand. And finally, we had some themes around equity and access, and this ranged on both sides of the conversation. Some comments supported providing recreational access for UAS users as an emerging user group, while others emphasized the equitable access to quiet, nature-based experiences, minimizing those impacts on the broader public. In response to our public comment period, as well as our public hearing, this was OPRD's kind of response to the public comment. We added clarification to the definition of a UAS or a UAS area that in accordance with the FAA, we don't regulate the UAS while they're in flight, recognizing that that is the FAA's jurisdiction. We also added language to prohibit UAS operations within a half-mile of boundaries of federally or state protected areas that explicitly prohibit the takeoff and landing of these devices, except with permission of the adjacent landowners. So this just gives us the ability to be more or better partners, I should say, with adjacent landowners. And then we added language around public safety agencies and utility providers that may be acting within their official capacity to operate for emergency and non-emergency purposes. Emergency purposes without notification, but for non-emergency purposes with notification to OPRD. So the staff recommendation here is to approve the rule changes as proposed. The changes are designed to protect park resources and visitor experience, provide clear and consistent guidance for UAS use, allow a limited and appropriate recreational opportunities for those wanting to participate in UAS operation, as well as enabling managed and phased implementation that aligns with our staff capacity in our field staff. So to close out, the request today is to adopt the UAS draft rules to Division 10 and Division 21 as presented in Agenda Item 9B. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I'm the only commissioner who's still on the commission that was here in 2021 when we first started debating these, and it was very complicated, and we sent it back for a lot more work on it. So this has been years in the making. A lot of thought and process has gone into this, and it's a difficult one, but I think it's important that if commissioners have thoughts and opinions, we get it out there and discuss thoroughly, as it is an important rule that we were mandated to do by the Oregon legislature. I don't know if folks have thoughts that they want to present, or we can move forward on a motion as presented with a second. And then if there are amendments that want to be made to that motion, we can do that. Go ahead, Commissioner Izumi.
Thank you. I actually wrote out my comments, so I hope you don't mind that I'm going to be reading them. Well, first I want to thank Robert and Katie and other OPRD staff. The initial
Rural Advisory Committee and the new RAC. I wasn't here when the first when this came up initially, but since then we've had discussions about UAS and drones, and I know that a lot of work has gone into the proposed rules over many years, and that the staff have carefully collected and tallied the many public comments and considered them in the proposed rules. My comments and concerns are informed by public comments already recorded by OPRD and concerns that I have heard from my constituents in my district. Because UAS technology is rapidly advancing and recreational drones have become increasingly popular, in part due to their affordability, I learned that you can now buy a drone with a camera for under $40. Because of this, I believe that it's really critical to take a cautious approach in order to protect the natural, cultural, scenic, and recreational resources and ensure a welcoming environment for all. It's worth highlighting that for many people, including those who commented on our proposed rules, our parks provide a crucial escape for mental relaxation and stress reduction, and a chance to unplug from our phones and disconnect from technology. Seeing and hearing drones can be an unwanted distraction and nuisance. While we work hard at OPRD to balance the recreational needs of all Oregonians, I do believe that it is okay for parks to be preserved as a place where the public can expect peace and quiet and a chance to get away from it all. I'm also concerned about the negative impacts on an already constrained budget in terms of staff resources and revenue from visitation. Adaptive management necessarily requires resources for monitoring and enforcement. And based on JR's excellent presentation yesterday on the many roles and responsibilities of OPRD staff, I don't want to add drone or UAS monitoring and enforcement to that list. Relatedly, drones in our parks may deter visitors who do not want to recreate among drones for a variety of reasons, including concerns about their privacy, safety, and security. I really appreciate that Robert provided additional context around the comments supporting UAS operations with restrictions, including the 206, the majority who support maximum restrictions. For example, very limited drone access within state parks, and 122 who support moderate restrictions, regulated drone use with clear management controls, including a permit system. That combined with the 43 who supported banning UAS entirely, it really helps me to think about the kinds of policies that would be that would be best for most Oregonians, or at least the people who commented. So I appreciate the changes to the rules that were made after the comment period. What I'd like to advocate is for an additional change. The proposed rules preserve an existing permit pathway for authorized use outside designated areas and allow for future use of optional management tools such as a UAS pass system. I'd really like to see a permit system now with an administrative fee charge that would allow for a limited number of UAS passes in a very limited number of areas. And such a system would be similar to the permit system used by Washington State Parks. And I have additional details on that. Their system, from what I understand, requires submitting a permit application, a non-refundable fee of $25. And then permit requirements, including certificate of insurance, detailed flight map, FAA authorization if in a restricted space. And I understand that that wouldn't necessarily apply to our rules, but also proof of FAA eligibility to legally fly remote controlled aircraft. And, you know, I do appreciate that some of the people who wrote in support of not having restrictions also did comment about the need for responsibly using drones. And I think that these types of certifications and acknowledgement of the responsibility that comes with that kind of opportunity to fly UAS would be important for this type of rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. Do we have any other comments or thoughts? And then I can entertain a motion. Go ahead, Commissioner Perullo.
Um, thank you very much. Robert, a very complicated issue. And quite frankly, one I don't think I've given enough consideration to prior to this meeting. I am struggling to understand map wise or visually the difference between open and conditional areas. And I have to really echo Commissioner Zumi's points as I have growing concerns about UAS now that they are becoming more accessible, now that there's facial recognition on them. And some people particularly may feel them to be a threat to their safety. But I mean, I'm frankly, I don't feel like I'm informed enough. So I think to say those things out loud. I mean, I am more into the area of like I'm trying to really understand what is the open areas as description of our parks. What are we talking about? Are we talking about the shores? Are we not talking about the shores? I mean, it's kind of like we have a lot of different parks. I'm trying to understand where the open areas kind of are described.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Perullo. If I can try to answer your question to the best of my ability. So in that work group that we convened prior to the most recent RAC, we came up with criteria that would designate whether a park property would either be in a green, yellow, or red zone. And what we're considering with this rule, instead of implementing across all parks at one time, we're looking at only those parks that would be wholly green. And so some of those areas that we've said that we will not allow drone operation is in our campgrounds or in other areas. So if any portion of a park property has any yellow or red zones, that park will be wholly red and drones will not be allowed at that park property. And so the idea of this implementation is picking one or two park properties within each region that would be wholly green. There's no concerns for drone operation use or limited visitation or other concerns for disruption towards our resources in that area, and promote those couple parks in each region as the drone operations where we, as our park rangers and field staff, can give people good options to go fly their UASs within those park properties. Um, the drone pass system that we talked about is something that we looked at in the long term. If we get broad public outreach for wanting to have additional drone operation areas where we can have very specific limited portions of other park properties that would require those more advanced agreements and considerations.
Robert, do you have a proposed statewide map that would show the green areas then, so we could be informed? Has that been developed yet?
Great question, Commissioner Perlow. We didn't want to commit a bunch of staff time to developing those maps if these rules were not something that was acceptable to the commission. So I have went through just in our own staff time on the ocean shores in the coastal region to identify a couple parks that might be wholly green, but that's additional staff work that would need to be done after these rules are adopted.
Cool. My next question is to council, actually. Can parks be put into a legal challenge about facial recognition or something of that sort currently? Or I mean, is there something that could be coming to parks based on someone using UAS and someone filing suit saying it's invasion of privacy because of name, image, and likeness?
It's a very interesting question. It's a developing area of law. At this point, you know, a park is a public area. So, you know, the way the analysis would go once one of these cases is brought is I assume that there would be, you know, an analysis of your expectation of privacy when you're in a public park setting versus, you know, the disclosure that that's happening by a individual operator there's no case law that I'm aware of yet, but you know, this is one we're going to follow and we can adapt rules as we go, as needed.
Thank you. Very complicated. Robert, thank you for the very hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perullo. Any other questions for staff? All right.
I would like to ask one quick question, Chair Hill, sorry.
Yes, go
Um,
ahead.
And that would be to staff about Commissioner Izumu's request to consider a permit system now. And what, if I interpreted your comment correctly?
Commissioner Griggs, the intent around a future permit system is really around a technological challenge. We would not have the capacity currently to have permits. And we're hoping that as our reservation system is addressed, there may be an opportunity through the reservation system to have a permitting process. We currently do offer permits for research or scientific research or special use permits or commercial permits. But the number to try to have all of this through another permitting system is more of a technological and staff capacity to address. In the long term, if we were going to have additional areas, having that capability would be important.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Izumi.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Katie. Does that mean that it is also possible that we may not have a future opportunity to have a pass system given technological capabilities and staff resources?
Commissioner Izumi, the intent would be that if we were to expand operations outside of the select parks that are wholly green, we would not do that until there was a time that a permit system was available. But yes, it will require staff capacity and technology in order to have the type of permit system that would be most beneficial for this.
Commissioner Perullo.
As we're talking about technology, I'm technology challenged. So if I am understanding where we are going with this rulemaking, so essentially this will give the foundation for staff to identify the green, yellow, and red zones. As far as so now we're acknowledging that there's UAS operations. We're acknowledging that there are restricted and unrestricted areas and things of that sort. I mean, so that's gives you the framework and with rulemaking locks that down. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Commissioner, go ahead, Robert.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Perullo. Yes, that is correct. So right now, staff have to rely on current rules to be able to manage any drone operation within a park, whether that's disrupting wildlife or disturbing or harassing other visitors. This framework allows us the ability to manage drones within our park. And this, by adopting these rules, would allow staff to take a look at our parks across the state to identify, those select parks that might be wholly green. And as Katie said, there wouldn't be expansion until there was a time that there is staff capacity to be able to do so beyond those initial ones.
And then as a follow-up question then, so from commission governance, that gives us an ongoing opportunity to review with staff or direct staff to change or remove from the green zones to red zones, or so we'll have an ongoing opportunity to review what the zones are once this rulemaking framework is set up. Is that correct?
Commissioner Perullo, correct. The adaptive management piece that is added into this rulemaking will allow staff to do some of that management. It's not tying us to specific locations being green continually or any of the, whether it's green, red, or orange. It would allow us to look at the conditions on the ground, and if it's a green area and then we discover there are raptors nesting there, we would close that area for those during that nesting season or for those conditions. So it does provide that opportunity for staff to manage adaptively. And yes, the commission can always provide feedback on that management. I do also want to clarify that because of FAA regulations, we are only able to manage the operations of drones within a state park property. Once they're in the air, we don't have, that's an FAA regulation, so we don't have the ability to manage or create rules for that. So someone may be out in a park that is considered closed or conditional and outside the boundaries of the park, flying over the park, and we would not have the ability to manage that behavior. There are federal rules that manage that behavior, and if they're doing things like harassing wildlife or things like that, it's all managed federally if they're not within park property.
So then, from an operational point of view, if an operator of a UAS is actually outside our parks and a park guest has a complaint, park staff really does not have any control over that.
That's
Correct. We can only manage the behavior within the park boundaries.
Very frustrating. Thank you for the education. I've kind of moved around on this, so thank you for letting me educate myself.
Thank you, Commissioner. Go ahead, Commissioner Izumi.
Yeah, thanks for taking all of my questions. I'm wondering about the checklist, the prohibited, conditional, and open. The conditional, I mean, these refer to a permit, and so it seems like this would be criteria that would be applied in the future if a permit system were operating. But I'm wondering about then the conditional has, based on these criteria, there would be a lot of park spaces that would be open because they don't meet the prohibited or conditional criteria. I think that I feel really nervous about that because that means that without actually seeing a map, I can't, I don't know what that means for, the number of areas that would be open, understanding like what Robert clarified, that there would only be a couple of places to begin, where, that would be open. But, the criteria gives me the sense that, in the future, a lot of our parks would be open to UAS operation, and we would have no sense of, how many people are, flying them. And yeah, I just in terms of even like the demand and whether or not how we're serving the public, we wouldn't know.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. It's a great question. And yeah, there are a variety of parks out there that may fit wholly within that green. And in staff conversations that I've had with our region resource teams as well as park managers, there's going to be a lot of things that do trigger parks at least on that green, yellow, and red zone into the yellow zone because there's seasonality restrictions or high visitation that happens during the summer that would trigger that high visitation use that would be not conducive to having drone operation within that area as well. So I think I sympathize with your concerns for sure that there are park properties out there that definitely could be green, recognizing that staff does want to take a very limited phased approach to be very careful about where we do implement, and then also being really retroactively looking back at whenever we do implement a green park where drones might be allowed, making sure that we're not having increased user conflicts or increased conflicts with UAS operation and our resources in that park. And so it's something that we want to be very cautious with, and recognizing that every park will be closed until we have the chance to go through with our region resource teams, with our park managers, our field staff, and making sure that that park does fit with that UAS recreation opportunity.
Can you restate that just one more time? So every park will remain closed to UAS until a thorough analysis is done
Yes.
by staff at that park as to what is sensitive there and if and find what is appropriate in terms of using UAS or not within
Yes,
the
thank you,
park.
Commissioner Hill, for clarifying. Yeah, that is correct. Every park is closed until allowed. And so that is that prohibited until allowed statement that we had within the rules that says that we're going to do that analysis with our region resource teams, with our park managers, with our district managers, and making sure that any park that we're looking at approving has been thoroughly vetted to make sure we're not going to run into any of those issues that we're really trying to avoid.
Can you also clarify, Robert, the rule, does it account for culturally sensitive or artifacts within the park? We've talked a lot about wildlife disturbance, noise disturbances. What about, we have a lot of parks that have very sensitive artifacts or things that have been there for a long time that we don't, I would think we don't want a lot of prying eyes around or some protection that we have agreements with tribes on. Do you have any insight on how that plays into this rule?
Yes, Commissioner Hill, thank you. That is part of the rule that our cultural and historic places are identified within the rule as places that we would be part of the consideration for allowing or not allowing drones, and that also fits within the criteria work group that the work group initially developed to make sure that that is a consideration that we would look at with our region resource teams that have our foresters, our archaeologists, our natural resource folks to make sure we're looking at all aspects of what a park might have before allowing a drone UAS operation in that park.
Thank you. Any further questions for Robert or other staff? All right. Well, we do not have a motion on the table. So if somebody would like to put one forward, I would entertain it.
I'll move approval to adopt the UAS draft rules to Division 10 through 21 as presented in agenda item 9B. And I super love that that's right on the screen.
I need a second for that. Who's going to step up for a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Condor, we have a second. Now's the time for open on debate or amendments that should be proposed to the rule that's before us. Otherwise, we can move to take a vote.
So, sorry to interrupt, Chair Hill.
Go ahead, Commissioner Spence.
Thank you. I just feel a lot of uneasiness from different people about this. Like we haven't had enough time to spend with it, or maybe it's just it's a big move, right? So I'm wondering if it's appropriate to potentially table this and have maybe a work session about it prior to our June meeting, so we can do a deep dive. I know that Robert did a good job with the brief, but maybe that would, I don't know, make me feel more comfortable, I guess. Just an idea.
Yeah, yes, I understand the frustration and the struggle with this. I agree that with new commissioners, there's probably not enough thorough deep dive on it. But it is also something we've been wrestling with for the last 5 years. And so, I'm not sure that, well, I don't know. We do have a motion on the table. Commissioner Perillo, do you have thoughts? I see.
My thoughts are, and this is where I've arrived at. I do not like UA. I don't like the concept of UAS personally, but I think the goal of the rulemaking is to provide staff and also the agency a procedure and an approach to management of UAS. And even if staff arrives at all of our parks are not eligible, I don't think they're able to move forward to manage UAS without this rulemaking. And so in that regard, I've become comfortable with the rulemaking because it's providing staff the direction to move forward. It's not providing staff the direction of our opinion of UAS or anything of that sort, but is giving them the mechanism to address it. And I think that's the point of this. And so I've got less concerns after this long discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Perullo. And I agree. I mean, I think the discussions in the past with previous commissioners have been uncomfortability around UAS generally. I mean, it's such a new, it's not new, unfortunately. It's been around for a long time. You go into a park, you want to have a special experience, but everybody's experience, as we all know, is so different, and how they use the park is so different. And as you say, Commissioner Perullo, we are acting on the legislature's requirement that we do something and take some action around UAS rulemaking, but then also this gives an opportunity to the staff to actually put some teeth and regulation into UAS control just for takeoff and landing. There's going to be plenty of bad actors who are going to park their car on Highway 101 and send their drones off into wherever. And we, aren't going to necessarily have any teeth to hold them accountable. We can certainly remind them, and staff can say, this is not a place that we allow drones, but there's only so much that we can do. So, it's a tough issue. It has been discussed in a public setting, lots and lots of comments, a lot of folks on both sides with passions on both sides. So I do want to acknowledge how tough this is. To Commissioner Spence's comments, I'm not sure how much more briefing and discussion of it is going to actually change what has already come forward. I'm open to considering that, but I do feel as though the staff have really wrestled with this and some of the hard discussions around this for a while now, and it's time for us as a commission to potentially move on and figure out what the next step is around UAS. So with that, we do have a motion, we have a second. Unless there are amendments proposed to the motion at hand, I would call for a vote. So all those in favor of the proposal at hand signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. And any abstentions? Okay. Thank you all. It's passed. So Robert, thank you so much for all your work on this, and all the staff. And I just want to acknowledge, like I said, this is a tough one. We all come into this wanting a really great experience at state parks, and there's so much unknown about UAS, and we just have to continue to work with staff and trust staff that they're doing the best to keep what we envision at our parks and what the public envisions at the parks in order. And we can adapt and change as things move forward too. This isn't end all be all. So
thank you so much, Chair Hill, Director Coons, and members of the commission for letting me present here today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. All right, moving on. No, I lost my agenda. We are on 9C, Division 149, Public Works Procurement Contracts and Construction Temporary Rules.
Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9C. And with me, Tracy Johnson from our park improvement team will be available to also, she'll do a portion of this presentation and answer any technical questions about the proposed rules. So some background, the public contracting code is in ORS 279A, B, and C. You may remember that we adopted rules in September based on the agency legislation exempting the agency from the public contracting code. When we adopted, let's go back. When we adopted those rules, we were under the impression that we could use DOJ model rules for additional resources. After DOJ reviewed solicitations, we learned that we are not allowed to use any portion of the public contracting code or DOJ model rules around procurement without adopting them into existing OPRD rules because we are exempt from the public contracting code. So the requirements must be explicitly stated in our rules. And in order to engage in public improvement contracts or architectural or engineering agreements, we did not have specific rules for those in our adopted rules. This specifically is around requiring bonds or liquidated damages or other protections that no longer exist because we are not using the DOJ model rules. So we are proposing temporary rules that would be modeled after much of the DOJ model rules to increase transparency, reduce risk, and have equitable contracting. It provides flexibility for emergencies and a clear pathway for protests, disputes, or corrections to any solicitations for public improvement contracting. Tracy's it will talk about why there's a need for temporary rules, and then Tracy will go over the specifics in the proposed rules. Under the Administrative Procedures Act, we are saying that a temporary rule is necessary to prevent cancellation of already scheduled projects, construction projects, and would avoid any delay in construction contracts that staff already have moving over the summer. Without the temporary rules, we may not be able to move projects forward during the construction window and ensure that we can meet the go bond timelines for many of these projects. Tracy.
Good afternoon, Chair Hill, Director Coons, and members of the commission. Thanks for having me. My name is Tracy Johnson. I'm a senior project manager in the Park Improvement Engineering Group. And I'm here to just talk a little bit about what we included in these proposed rules. So when the exemption occurred, we adopted new rules under Division 147, Chapter 736, Divisions 146 and 147, which are part of the OPRD's rules. At that time, we deleted two rules we had, which were Division 148 and 149. 148 pertains to architecture and engineering and related services. However, I will say our prior 148 made a couple of minor modifications to DOJ's model rules. So we had the model rules as our source, and we made a couple minor, like a few paragraphs of change, and we deleted that with the exemption. So when we went to start looking at procurements for our GO bonds and our FIP projects over the next year, summer, just stuff on our 6 to 9 month horizon, DOJ flagged some concerns with the fact that we were not allowed to use the model rules from DOJ, and we also didn't have our own rules. So they directed us to use the model rules as a template and work from those to create rules that worked for our agency and our needs. A couple of the things that are specific to us, why we need our own rules, are the changes in our procurement levels. So under the model rules, when we were under public procurement rules, the old way, we had a direct award limit of 20,000. With the rule change last year, it increased to 100,000. Intermediate selection and formal selection, all of those thresholds shifted. So that changed the way we issue contracts and do business, and we needed to incorporate those changes into the rules. We also are now exempt from some of the other things that are included in state procurement rules. For engineering and architecture specifically, there are qualifications-based selection criteria for contracts over 100,000. That's not something that we no longer have to comply with that. So we have decisions to make about when we want to use fee-based selection versus qualification-based selection, when proposals are going to be disclosed, things like that. Generally, for these temporary rules, we followed the model rules from OAR, so it was a small change from what our historic rule was that we followed. We have reserved a few sections that we want to look at more closely as we go into formal rulemaking so that we can, make sure we've considered all of the ramifications of the changes. So that's the primary thing for architectural and engineering. They are modeled really closely or they follow the model rules really closely, and then numbering follows the model rules really closely. So that it helps us to be able to compare what we used to have with what we're proposing moving forward. One of the items, I'll talk about 149 in just a second, but one of the other items that is interesting on this is we also got separated from all of the definitions that control our contract terms and the work we do. So as part of this, we've included a lot of definitions in divisions 148 and 149 that'll support contracts in the near term under the temporary rules. And then when we go to final rulemaking, we will probably end up pulling most of those definitions from 148 and 149 and consolidating them in an amended division 146, which is where usually a lot of the definitions live. You can go out now to 149, Katie. So 149 relates specifically to construction contracts. It's for public improvements and general construction contracts. This is another one that we primarily followed the DOJ model rule historically. And there are some changes with our exemption from ORS 279 A, B, and C, and our exemption from the state public procurement rules. So this is actually where DOJ really started raising flags about our ability to have bonding on our contracts, how we define our competitive bidding process for these different levels of procurements, whether or not we can use prevailing wages on projects, which we cannot. So that's something that we learned through this process. We're exempt from BOLI because BOLI is included under 279 A, B, and C. So that's something that we had to change in our contracts moving forward. But we worked through this. We worked really closely with procurement, the park improvement team, and then coordinating with DOJ to put together revised rules or new draft temporary rules for our purposes for the next few months. And then we have some specific things that we'll look at prior to permanent rulemaking. Again, the procurement thresholds are different for us as an agency than they were before. So that's one of the areas where we spent a lot of time thinking about the procurement processes for those thresholds, and also when we would want to institute bonding related to supporting these construction projects to help protect the agency and our funding as we are building projects on our parks. There are a few things that we did not include from the model rules. There are things that we didn't historically use, but are things that we might want to consider adding in the future. Specifically, alternative procurement methods is one thing that was covered under the model rules, but was not something we ever used or accessed. That could be design build type of contracts, or CMGC, which is, I forget what CMG stands for, but it's a design, it's a variation on design build kind of. Anyway, so that's really, a lot of this is really just refreshing and updating some things that we used to deal with, or used to be the backbone for our contracts. And then looking at what else we might want to revisit before we go into final rulemaking to adopt these.
So if you approve adopting temporary rules this month, we would also request that you open permanent rulemaking. We would develop the draft for the permanent rules between May and June, and then in July open for public comment on the permanent rules and have a public hearing, and then prepare in August additional DOJ review of the permanent rules, and then come back to you in September with permanent rules for adoption before the temporary rules would expire. So the request, we're happy to answer any questions. I know this one is pretty long, but the request is to adopt temporary rules for division 148 and 149, and then to open rulemaking for division 146, 147, 148, and 149. That will allow for some of the changes that you see in the temporary rules to be put in the other divisions. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy and Katie. Go ahead, Commissioner Condor. Oh, you're on mute still.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Tracy, I saw those bullet points that you had on there about all the different items you're going to be covering, and I never saw change orders listed in there, which for a person who's worked on hundreds of these engineering contracts, that seems to be a big thing, especially if we're going to start sole sourcing or direct buying from these folks. Is that one of the items that you're looking at under change orders?
The whole rules are really long, so this bullet
Right.
list is sort of the big things.
Okay,
So
that's a
change
big-
orders are included, and I will say for the work that we do, change orders are covered by a couple of different approaches. So contract change is included in the model rules, and so for each procurement level, the maximum value is 125% of the procurement level. So if the procurement level is 100,000, then the maximum change, so the maximum initial contract can't be more than 100, and then changes to it can't exceed 125 generally. There are a couple of exceptions outlined in the rule, but generally that is the criteria that we adhere to. There also is a secondary set of change order sort of protection, which is that on construction contracts, change orders that are greater than 10% of the initial contract value, or if we've had cumulative change orders that are greater than a certain level, which I believe is 30%, then it triggers a DOJ round of review. So DOJ reviews the original contract documents when we go to bid, they review before contracting, and then if change orders accumulate, they review again. So we have a couple of backstops on change orders.
Good. And the second thing I had to ask you was you made a comment that this was exempt from BOLI. No matter what the dollar amount, it's still exempt from BOLI?
Yes, so the statute that BOLI is covered by, or that includes BOLI, is ORS 279C, I believe it's 800. And so because we are at the very beginning of 279 A, B, and C, we are exempt from public procurement rules. We are therefore exempt from BOLI currently as well. That means we cannot use we can include in our contracts that we expect the contractor to use prevailing wage, but we do not pay BOLI a fee for administration or review of and we don't have to submit. This is new information. We have not had an opportunity to meet with BOLI to discuss this, but this is DOJ's interpretation of where we are today, is that we are not subject. Of course, that means like the contractors who are doing our work, they still have to follow labor law, but specifically the BOLI prevailing wage rate and their apprentice program are currently not part of our contracts. If we have a federal grant that requires Davis-Bacon, then Davis-Bacon would still apply to the contract. That does happen sometimes. But it's sort of a different case.
Thank you.
Great questions, Commissioner Condor. Any other questions on this? Sorry, I've got my puppy. It wants to join the meeting, so you might see her head pop up. All right. I would entertain a motion if there's no further comments or questions on this.
Okay. I move that we adopt the temporary rule 736, Division 148, 149, and open permanent rulemaking for divisions 146, 147, 148, 149 to take temporary rules and make a long-term solution.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Can I get
Second.
a second? Thank you, Commissioner Spence. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Seeing none, so approved. Thank you. Thank you for all the work done on this. Moving on to the last piece of our rulemaking portion of the agenda, Division 8 Land and Water Conservation Fund with Katie.
So Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, Katie Guthrie here with agenda item 9D, a land and water conservation fund grants, and Michelle Scalise is here as well if you have technical questions about the program. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is a federally funded program administered by OPRD that allows public entities to apply for grants for outdoor recreation, to acquire land for outdoor recreation or develop basic outdoor recreation facilities. It's currently governed by Division 8, And that covers program requirements, definitions, apportionment of the funding, and other criteria. The proposed rule change would revise the allocation funding between OPRD and other qualified agencies. This is one grant program where the department is an eligible applicant to the grant program that we administer. It's unusual and unique in that case. The proposed rule change would allow the grant cycle to be changed so that instead of an annual grant cycle, we would do it once per biennium for competitive grants. And then the off years would be dedicated to agency projects if there are eligible agency projects. We could do it more frequently if there were not eligible agency projects. And that's basically what we're looking to do is redistribute funds to have like local and state grant projects in one grant cycle and then OPRD projects in a separate grant cycle. Michelle, do you have any more that you would like to add to that?
Yes, Chair Hill, Director Coons, members of the commission, Michelle Scalise for the record. Yes, so I just wanted to add that we did, while looking into this, look into what other states do. Many other states that are state park agencies just take the full apportionment for LWCF and just dedicate that only to state park projects. We're not required to have a local grant program where we award out to local communities. However, we would like to keep that and at the same time be able to have some flexibility with the funds that we have. Although OPRD can apply and compete with the local communities, we would like to have a way to have that funding available to us just every other year, every other apportionment.
As our existing grant programs, like the local government grant program, funding has increased for local governments, that's a grant program that OPRD is not eligible to apply for. So there is additional funding for local in county grant programs or county park programs through that grant. So this grants become less competitive with those entities because the local government grant program funding is more widely available.
Great, thank you. Can you remind me how much we receive annually on average? I know it changes from the feds for LWCF.
Commissioner Hill, yes, we have been receiving approximately $4 million a year, which is up quite a bit in the last 10-year period. So it can range. We have available funds, as you saw in our earlier brief. We had about $11 million left. And so, we carry forward what we don't award, but it equals out to about 4 to 5 million per year.
And if
sorry, I'm freaking out. That's outside my office. You're looking outside my office right now.
Oh, you could just point your screen and show us the exact same reflection.
Is a recipient at one point. If approved, so just a back step, these proposed draft rules, we did not do a rule advisory committee, but the Land and Water Conservation Fund Grant Committee did review the initial draft of the rules. It includes former applicants, future applicants, and kind of the interested parties for this proposed rule change, and they reviewed those initial drafts. If approved, we would open the public comment period and have a hearing this spring, and then bring them back to you for final adoption in June or September, based on the comments that we received. There is one change in the draft that is in your packet. We had initially proposed taking the specific reference to the federal guidance in the specific version out of rule. We cannot do that, so we will just update the version with the current version, and then you may have to do rulemaking again as the federal government changes the guidance. We would have to adopt a new version, but in order to meet our rulemaking requirements, we are not allowed to take that out.
Thank you. I have a technical question. If OPRD accepts land and water conservation grants, then technically the properties that we take that money for has to be under the land and water conservation requirements in perpetuity, correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Chair Hill, that is correct. And
Clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Chair Hill, if you don't mind, this Michelle will cancel the application process for this fall winter. It normally runs on November or something like that. Is that right? If it's adopted in the after public comment and all the things.
Commissioner Spence, yes, the next grant cycle, we just obviously just had one because you approved those grants. So yes, that would be the plan, is to not have the one that would be planned for the next upcoming year, and dedicate those funds to OPRD projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Perullo.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Just to amplify the question you had, is there a downside to what you're talking about of being under land and water conservation? We need that. The new commissioners need to understand.
Yeah. Have we done a briefing on, I think we did. Did we do a briefing on LWCF? So I guess the staff could answer that easily, but potentially not for state parks. I mean, we manage land and assets for public recreation. The problem is if we choose to sell it in the future, it has to stay in perpetuity for recreational purposes. And so development could not happen on that. And it really gets more frustrating at the local level, which is probably why we don't have a ton of applicants, because any grant that supports projects with land and water conservation money has specific requirements of what they can and cannot do on that property. And so I know locally we've got some parks that they want to put, an indoor gymnasium on for kids that would not necessarily be allowed under land and water conservation rules. There's some flexibility, but it can be pretty restrictive, and that's in perpetuity and can never go away. So in 100 years, that land will have the same restrictions on it. So that's why I wanted to flag. Obviously, we have plenty of property that is probably always going to stay in those for those purposes and can use these funds, but it is pretty restrictive, which makes it hard.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Chair Hill, Commissioner Perullo, if I may add on to that, one of the things that I would note is that OPRD has many, many parks that already have an LWCF boundary on it. You can't make it more restrictive, so that in perpetuity requirement already exists on many of our parks that actually could use this funding for further development, or not maintenance, but rehabilitation of existing facilities. Also, just to add, the restrictions don't restrict necessarily adding like a indoor recreation facility. LWCF cannot fund those. They do require review, and it definitely is more of a more steps to make sure, but we do now have a full-time staff member dedicated to compliance that can pretty readily review these things with NPS. But yes, I believe that OPRD has enough properties already having to comply with LWCF that the agency could potentially get more grants and never encumber any additional boundaries in our system.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. The only flag and I know this is to open rulemaking, but is to consider keeping the next cycle for the public and allowing them to apply for this next round of LWC grants, and then moving into potentially state owning or state applications as we move forward. Because I do know some communities that are already planning to go after some land and water conservation grant funding next year. So it would be, in terms of I know a lot of cities and communities plan well in advance to make sure their staff are geared up and they're ready to go for applications. And so I wouldn't want to throw curveballs to folks on this. Just my 2 cents. Okay, I think we need to have a motion on this.
I'll do it. I'm happy to make a motion to open rulemaking to amend Land and Water Conservation Fund Rules AR 736-007-000 through 736-007-0050 as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Perlow. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. All in favor of opening rulemaking to amend the land and water
Sorry,
conservation?
Chair Hill,
Oh.
sorry. Is
Go ahead.
this, is, to your point, I agree with that. So is it appropriate to amend this? Or would rulemaking would it not matter? Could staff clarify that if the cancellation of this year, the 2026 round for different local governments and counties and whoever can qualify?
Commissioner Spence, we can, because you're not adopting these rules, you're just recommending opening, we can make sure that that's covered before we bring it back to you for adoption. The proposed rules don't specify which year we would do the grant, the competitive cycle versus which year we would do the OPRD specific grants. So
Yeah.
I think it changes the specific rules, but we can make sure to address that when we present this to for adoption.
Thank you. I think it's a good point by Chair Hill. Thank you.
One thing you could consider doing is just opening all of Division 8 in case there's a corresponding change we need to make somewhere in the division that we're not aware of at this moment. We wouldn't have to change anything elsewhere, but it would give us that flexibility if we identified that need.
So we need to amend the motion?
Yeah, I would just say, change the motion to say that you're opening rulemaking on OAR 736 Division 8.
Would you like me to do that, Chair Hill?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So then to amend the motion to the language presented by council.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. All right, we are voting on the amended motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Seeing none, it's approved. Well, thank you all. That was great. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Michelle. All right. That is it for our agenda items. We have number 10, which is reports. So just take a look at those items. If there's anything that stands out, speak now or follow up with staff or myself at a later time. But we will go ahead and adjourn our commission meeting for April.